Okay, this sounds like a scene out of a horror movie, but it's part of a real-life case that just happened in the Philippines. December 10th, 2021, so this is pretty recent. 17-year-old Janice is hiding under her bed. There were 3 masked men that had broken into the family home. They're going room to room, attacking anyone that they stumble across. Janice is hiding underneath her bed, literally a horror movie. Janice managed to slide under the bed, but she had no idea when the door to her room would open, when they would walk in, if they would even see her. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they would drag her out by her ankles. She didn't make any noise. She can't make any noise. She obviously can't call the emergency service lines. She doesn't even want to talk. She's terrified. So she starts texting her family group chat, hoping her parents would read it and maybe they would send help. They would come to save her. Her parents are both at work. She's home alone with her 2 siblings, and she starts texting the group chat. 3 masked men enter the house. They're attacking us. Please, please help. I can hear them screaming. They're hurting us, please. That was at 2:48 p.m. Janice could hear her siblings scream for help, and she was getting no response from her parents. Maybe they didn't see it yet. They were at work. So she didn't know what else to do or who else to turn to. I mean, think about it. Like, how quickly do your friends respond to your texts? So instead, at 3 p.m., so just about 12 minutes later, Janice, as quietly and as quickly as her sweaty fingers allow her to, she posts on Facebook. Guys, help me, please. Someone broke into the house. Help, please. I don't want to die. I'm here inside a room hiding right now. Please, please help. And then she heard footsteps approaching her door, her bedroom door. She didn't know if it was a parent, a police officer, or maybe it was the 3 masked men. Podcast.com. This case is pretty recent. It's based in the Philippines, and a lot of the sources were a mix of Tagalog and English. I did get a Tagalog speaker to help translate and help with the research, but of course, there are still things I think that can get lost in translation. If you guys know anything about this case that I didn't mention today, please let us know. And with that being said, let's get into the very, very strange case that everyone is comparing to a very specific Hollywood horror movie. Like one of the most iconic horror movies. Because this case is truly one of those instances where you think you're like, I know where this is going. And then it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So let's go back to December 10th, 2021. Really quick. Clearly, this is a crucial day. This is the day that Janice is hiding under her bed. And immediately, the beginning of the day was off to a memorable start, a good start. It was the first time that Janice called the McGuads, her parents, McGuad, Mr. and Mrs. McGuad, mom and dad. They were leaving for work. They were kissing the kids on the cheek, and she called them mom and dad. I mean, I'm sure they told her for a while now that she can call them whatever she feels comfortable with, but she finally called them mom and dad. That's a huge day for any adoptive parent. You feel accepted. You feel like you earned this child's trust. You earned the title. I imagine Mr. McGuad, Cruz, his first name is Cruz, went to work just smiling, like ear to ear, split grin. He just seemed really excited about this and about the family that he was working so hard for. So while he's at work, his coworker opens the door. He's a teacher, so opens the door to his classroom, pops his head in, and is like, don't freak out, Mr. McGuad. Don't panic, but your house has been ransacked. You need to go home now. Mr. McGuad panicked. He freaked out. He runs out of the office. I think it took him about 15 minutes to get into his car, drive all the way home from the school, and there was no context given to him about what his coworker said. All he knew is that his house was ransacked and his 3 kids were at home, or they were supposed to be at home. He's terrified. He can't care less about the damn house. He just needs to get home for his kids, okay? He forgot his house key in the hurry because when he jumps out of the car, he runs to the front door and he doesn't have the key. He's shaking the handle. It's locked. He's pushing up against the door. It's still locked. It's not budging. So he decides, I got to try another door. He turns to leave the front door and he looks down because there's like a crunch underneath his feet. He realizes that at the front of the front door, just on the floor, is a blood-soaked blanket and a knife. The handle of the knife was also missing. So he tries...
the blade part?
Yeah, just the blade part. I imagine, and this is speculative, but I imagine that would happen if you were using the knife to do like very severe things for the handle to break off. Mm-hmm. There must be a lot of force applied in some sort of direction. I don't think anyone came in with just a knife blade. So he tries the front door again. And this time there's a stronger sense of, panic and distress after what he saw. He's banging on the doors, shouting his kids' names. 3 kids, nothing. The door won't even budge. So he runs around the house to the back door and he's still screaming his kids' names like Gwen, boy, it's a nickname, Janice. And so he's running around the house to the back. There wasn't even a single scream coming from inside the house. It was eerily quiet. He gets to the back door, yanks it open. Thankfully, it's unlocked. And this is when Mr. McGuad realizes he's got to protect his kids. Okay, so of course, any father wants to immediately run into the house and scream his kids' names and frantically just look for them, making sure that they're alive. But he's thinking, if there's an attacker, if they're maybe holding my kids hostage so that they can't scream and shout, I got to be quiet and maybe I can at least sneak up on the attacker. That's what he's thinking. He's like, maybe I can knock them out. So as quietly as possible, he starts tiptoeing through the kitchen. And the minute he steps into the living room, his entire life, at least how he knew it, just ended in that moment. The entire living room was painted red with blood. You couldn't even see the floor. That's how much blood there was. Broken vases that were knocked over. There were glass shards everywhere. Blankets were soaked in blood. They were just thrown around. Even things that didn't belong in the kitchen, like pans, pots, baseball bats, they were just in the center of all of this, and they were covered and soaked in blood. And in the middle were the bodies of 2 of his 3 children. They had been murdered. Whoever did this was clearly sick and deranged and angry. I mean, the injuries on the McGuad kids were really bad. One of them was even missing an ear. It had been severed off. Now, one of his children did manage to survive, but they were incredibly distraught, obviously. They had been hiding under the bed when the attack took place, and they heard every noise coming from downstairs. In what was supposed to be one of the best days of Cruz McGuad's life, it was now like a living nightmare. Every time he closed his eyes, all he would see are the 2 kids laying in the living room. Before we get into who survived, how it happened, I need to give you a breakdown of the McGuad family. And it starts with 4 McGuads. The 2 McGuad parents, Cruz and Lavella, and their now teenage kids, Gwen and Louie. So it's the 4 of them. Until one day, Gwen and Louie, they're both teenagers, they come home. They're like, Mom, Dad, we gotta talk to you about something. They sit their parents down, and in like the most professional Shark Tank proposal, concise, calm, well thought out presentation, they're telling their parents why they need a 5th member of the family, why they need to adopt Gwen's best friend, Janice. It kind of sounds crazy. It's like, no, we're not just going to adopt your best friend so that you can have a never-ending sleepover. That's not how life works. But the kids are like, Mom, hear me out. She's an orphan. She's been bouncing around from house to house. She is working as a live-in nanny right now, and she's never going to have a future like this. She hasn't even been able to go to school or study or have a childhood. She's constantly working. And then the minute that the family decides they don't need a nanny anymore, she's going to be out on the streets. She's 17. She was forced to grow up when she was like 5 years old. Please, please, please. Can we just let her move into our house? And she said that she would cook and clean and do the laundry and all of this. And we don't even have to pay her. She just wants to feel safe. Please, 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 please. Parents are like, okay, wow, this is really intense.
Do you know how old they are?
Yes, Louis, the boy, is 16 and Gwen just turned 18.
Oh, okay.
So they're all teenagers, yeah. Like teens, yeah. And the parents are like, I don't know, guys. We don't even have a spare room. The 16-year-old Louis, the boy, is like, well, I could just sleep on the couch. Like, I'll give up my room.
Wow.
I mean, a 16-year-old boy to give up his room, that's very, very selfless. He's like, come on, guys. Like, you always told us we have to help our friends in need. Like, come on, Mom, Dad. They're begging, and they're like, let us have a private conversation about this, because this is a lot. And the few points that they keep coming back to as adults are, Gwen's friend Janice was just a kid, just like their kids. She deserved a fighting chance at life. They had seen her around, and yeah, she looked miserable. Also in the Philippines, just like everywhere else in the world, when a young woman doesn't have the proper resources or support system, there's a very real risk that they might end up on the street. And once that happens, it's very likely that she could potentially be forced into work or worse. And even just the thought and threat of that looming over Janice's head, I mean, as parents, that's heartbreaking. Like, this kid is growing up knowing that this could happen to her at any moment. Just like one choice from somebody else. She has no control over her life, no safety net. The McGuad parents decide, maybe we can take the burden off of Janice. She's just a kid. She shouldn't have to worry about making sure that she has enough food and shelter. So the McGuads are very religious. They thought, you know what? Maybe the Lord has blessed us with enough to provide for our family and a little bit more, because maybe we were meant to provide for Janice. Look, the McGuads are incredible people. I mean, there are so many families with even more than what the McGuads had, and they probably wouldn't agree to this. but they were just not normal people. So the McGuad family, they went from 4 to 5 members. They formally adopted Janice into the family, like legal papers and everything. So let's talk about each one of the family members. Mr. McGuad, Cruz, the father. He worked as an elementary school teacher, and it seemed like his career path was on the right track. He was spoken very highly of, constantly getting recognized for his good work. There was a promotion in the works, so he was doing well financially as well. And his wife, Novella, she was the principal at the same elementary school. So the two of them, they don't make like an insane amount of money. They're school teachers, they're a principal, but they were considered more privileged in their town. They owned land, which is a huge deal. They're able to support their kids. They didn't have to choose between putting food on the table for the night or turning the lights on. A lot of families around them, unfortunately, had to make a choice between the two. Now, the two kids, Louis McGuad, nicknamed Boy Boy, he's the youngest. He's the 16-year-old. He's like the charismatic one in the family. He's calm, but he has this like energy when you meet him. You're already spilling your life secrets, like your deepest fears, what you want to become one day. And you're like, why did I just tell this random boy that I just met all my deepest fears in life? I think he was just very warm and comforting. People felt inclined to open up to him when they saw him. He also never judged anyone. In fact, he would find a way to relate to you so that you don't feel alone or weird. So he's 16 at this point, and he tells his parents, I'm going to continue working hard at school, and I'm going to grow up, and I'm going to be a lawyer. This is a huge commitment to make at 16 years old, but he was down for it. Okay, I don't know. Just reading about Louis, he seems like the type that I would be very intrigued by. Like, he's very smart, but he's also very creative. He plays the guitar. He likes to read and draw. So that's Louis, the youngest of the family, Boy Boy. His older sister's name is Gwen, and she was really the studious one, like the super smart one. Like, Louis is smart, but Gwen is intense. For example, she was a Girl Scout as a kid. And you know how they have those, like, sashes that they wear? Her sash was filled with badges and pins. There wasn't even a single space left for an extra pin. She completed every level of the Girl Scouts program in her free time, basically for fun. And she's like, wow, I kind of need more challenge. So in high school, she enrolls for this pre-med prep school at the local university for high schoolers. She's like, I'm going to grow up and be a doctor. So I don't know what the McGuads did, but they've raised their kids right. Like, one wants to be a lawyer, one wants to be a doctor, and they're both really upstanding, moral kids. She also volunteered in her free time. Okay, I swear, she's like a college acceptance administrator's dream candidate. And yeah, I probably want her to be my doctor, okay? She's really approachable. If you happen to be at a gathering of any sort, like a party, you're feeling extra shy, uncomfortable. You're like, I don't know, a single person here. I'm so nervous. She would sit with you and keep you company the whole time. Okay, you know how some people will come and sit with you and they'll chat you up, but the minute that someone more interesting comes in or a friend of theirs comes in, they ditch you. They're like, okay, bye, have a good one. Gwen was not like that. She would sit there until you were comfortable. She would be there with you the whole freaking time. That's how she meets Janice, her best friend, and now adopted sister. The McGuads are really well liked, and they're constantly being invited to these social gatherings. Now, one of their close family friends had a live-in nanny that would tag along to all these dinners and parties and just kind of run after the family's kids. So she's a live-in nanny for one of the McGuads' family friends. So she's brought to these parties on a working basis. You know, she's running around looking for the little kids that she's supposed to watch. And there's a bunch of other teenagers there that are just teenagers, like Gwen and Louie. They're there because it's fun and it's a Saturday, but she's working. And Gwen noticed her on more than one occasion. Mainly because, you know, Gwen's like, she looks like my age. She must be my age, but wow, she's working. So Gwen strikes up a conversation with her, and they instantly click. Janice is a year younger. She's 17. Gwen just turned 18. And the two of them are like attached at the hip after the first time they start talking. Their favorite thing to do, this is like their go-to. Whenever Janice could get off work for a few hours, they would come up with these elaborate photo shoot sets. And they would like hang up sheets in the backyard and do these fancy little backgrounds. They would set up the little string lights. They would try to time it with golden hour. And then they would do each other's makeup and hair. And they would spend hours just goofing around trying to take pictures of each other. They also really enjoyed filming TikToks together, just of them dancing. It's really cute. It seems like they're really close friends. They kind of look a little shy doing the dances, but Louis is really cute and charming. Okay, in a way that little brothers typically seem to be. He's like sticking his hairy leg out to block the girls when they're dancing, and they're all like laughing and swatting his leg away. So the three of them, they look very comfortable with each other. So it's like once they're comfortable, Gwen feels like she can finally ask, the question, like, why are you living nanny for this family? Like, you don't seem to enjoy it. Do you need to make money for your parents? Like, what's going on? You can tell me, or if you don't want to, you don't have to tell me. Janice opens up and she says, well, I don't have parents. And she starts walking Gwen through her life story, and it's pretty heartbreaking. Janice said her first real memory started when she was like 8 years old. Before that, she doesn't really remember much. She just remembers she's 8, and a stranger found her wandering around a ship by herself, like a giant boat. Not even like a cruise, like I'm talking like a shipping container boat. Her parents were nowhere to be found. I don't know, they may have lost her, but more likely Janice believes that they just completely abandoned her. The stranger was nice and thankfully not a child predator, because they helped post Janice's name and picture on Facebook. Okay, I don't know if that's a good idea, but you get it. And they were posting on online forums to see if her parents were looking for her. Nobody ever responded. Finally, Janice is dropped off at the Philippines version of CPS, the Department of Social Welfare and Development. We're just going to call it DWSD. And that's where Janice stayed. So she's bouncing around from home to home. And then recently, she was offered a job as a live-in nanny for this young family. And she took it. Okay, so she hates the job. She hates it. But don't get me wrong, she's so grateful for this opportunity. I mean, to have like a family take her in and let her live with them, that's a great job. It's sad though. She like gets to see these young kids live this amazing life with a family that care about her. She sees Gwen and all the teenagers at the gatherings being, teenagers. They have stress, but it's different. They have parents to comfort them. She told Gwen one of the things that she wished for the most growing up. She just wished that she could run around with kids. She wished that when she was running around, she would fall down, scrape her knee, and she could just have a mom to run to that would hug her and put her on her lap and blow on her knee and tell her, it's okay, I got you. I mean, even now, Janice said she wished that all she had to worry about was getting good grades and getting accepted into college and not getting fired and being without a home and having nothing to fend for herself. So Gwen is really emotional when she hears Janice's story. I mean, for one, she had come to see Janice as her sister. So to hear about how hard her life was, it was rough. But another reason was, I'm sure it touched on the privilege that Gwen felt like she had to know that she was lucky enough that she could always depend on her parents to be there. So like, side note, Gwen's parents, they're not like free-for-all parents. They're not showering her with amazing, luxurious items and like letting her do whatever she wants. Just because they were doing okay didn't mean that they were spoiling the kids. Each member of their family, they had their own set of chores. Everyone had to pitch in. The kids had to study. They had to get good grades. Everyone had to be responsible. They had to go to church on Sundays. Like, there were a lot of rules. They were actually pretty strict parents. But Gwen and Louis had come to really respect their parents for that. They really were raised really, really well. Like, I think the fact that Gwen and Louis are even comfortable enough to ask their parents to adopt Janice, that just shows you how tight they are, how close they are. So Janice moves in. She gets formally adopted, okay? She moves into Louis' room. He moves out. He's permanently on couch duty now. And from the moment that Janice moves in, everyone treats her like family. They wanted her to feel like at home. They enrolled her in a school immediately. I mean, she had all this room to breathe now. She didn't wake up every single morning to worry about work and putting food on the table. She was just a kid. She said for the first time, she had the luxury of daydreaming about her future, like what her dreams are going to be, what she wants to be when she grows up. She had never done that before. So after moving in, the three siblings, they get closer and closer. They kept doing their photo shoots, hanging out all the time. Janice even went on vacation with the McGuad family for the first time. So really close. Now, I do want to make it clear. Not everything was sunshine and rainbows. I'm sure any adoptive parent will tell you that it's freaking hard when a new child has to get accustomed to their new environment, learn the rules, and even just to trust the adoptive parents. It's a long process. There's this long, hard grace period you have to go through, and it's completely normal for there to be hiccups along the way. You just have to be open about it, which the McGuads were. I really do think that them being educators helped them in this whole process. They were always patient and understanding. So Janice's first hiccup came a few months after her adoption. The McGuad family had land and a few pigs that they were raising on this land. So they have little pigsters. And Cruz sold one of these pigs for about $200. He takes a little cash, it's a bunch of small bills. He puts it in a little cash jar in the primary bedroom because he knew that I don't know, maybe he'll need it for an emergency one day. The same month, his elderly parents test positive for COVID. Now, in the Philippines in 2021, there were these quarantine facilities that you have to go to. So at least in this area. So his parents, they're being quarantined in a government facility and they would need money for food and supplies while they were stuck in there. Cruz is like, okay, perfect. I knew that $200 was going to come in handy. He runs to grab it from his little glass jar and it's freaking empty. It's gone. He's like, that's so weird. So he asks his wife, hey babe, like, have you seen the money? She's like, no, why would I touch the money? He asks his kids and they're like, no, I haven't seen the freaking pig money. Like, why would I, where, what? He's like, okay, well, do you guys know where it would be? Everyone's shrugging. They have no idea. They all start helping Cruz search for the missing money. Cruz even wondered if maybe thieves had gotten into the house to take the money, but that didn't make sense because nothing else was stolen. And usually someone was home, so wouldn't they have known? They also have these big dogs that bark like crazy at strangers. So he's genuinely puzzled by this. He's like, this is a case of missing money. This is mind-boggling to me. The family look around for hours. You know, the family is doing well enough to feed the kids and everyone. They're financially stable to a degree, but they don't just have a ton of extra money laying around. So Cruz really was counting on this $200 to give to his parents. He needed it. They're doing everything. Couch cushions, under the refrigerator, under the stove. They're turning over all of the rugs. And one of the kids picks up Janice's backpack. Not because they think it's in Janice's backpack, but to search the ground underneath Janice's backpack. Her backpack was suspiciously heavy. Again, he had received small bills for the sale of the pig, including, I believe, like heavier coins maybe. And so it's not just like two $100 bills. They're like, oh, that's weird because we're doing remote learning. We don't really have a lot of textbooks in our bags right now. So they thought, what the hell? Why is her backpack so heavy? But they didn't accuse her. They just kind of glanced at Janice and she saw the kid, her sibling, holding her backpack. And it was just, the look of guilt was so clear on her face. It was clear as day. She confesses. Turns out Janice had a secret compartment that she made in her backpack. So you know the bottom flap of your backpack, you open it up and you look inside and you're like, oh, that's the bottom of the backpack. Well, she undid the seam, created a little empty space between the fabric and the actual inner lining of the bottom of the backpack, hid the cash in there, sewed it back on, basically creating a false bottom for her backpack. Very crafty. But the crazy thing is, and this is why I'm like, I don't know if I can be a parent because it takes so much patience and understanding. Because I'd be like, why'd you do that? That's crazy. But Cruz wasn't even angry. He was disappointed. He's human. And her new family, they all looked at her confused and disappointed. But Janice was breaking down. She's like, I'm so sorry. I don't even know why I did that. Like, I know you probably hate me now. It's awful. I'm so sorry from stealing from you. Please, like, I totally get it. If you want to kick me out of the house, if you want me gone, like, I get it if you never trust me again. But please, I'm just so sorry. I really don't know why I did that. The McGuards were hurt, but they also kind of understood. So Janice had grown up with nothing. She didn't have the security that the McGuad kids had grown up with. And side note, stealing is actually very common in families with recent adoptees, especially with money and food. It comes from the child's scarcity mindset. So, think about it. If you never know where your next meal or money for your next meal or even shoes or socks is coming from, and now you're suddenly in a place with an abundance of food, of course you're gonna think, I should probably grab some more so I can save it for later when I inevitably need it again. There's no way you're just going to take it for granted immediately and be like, this is my life now, unlimited food. These children truly believe this family's going to let them go, they're going to face scarcity again, and they need to stock up. I know it's messed up that she stole the money, but it's kind of heartbreaking when you think about the psychology of why an adopted child might steal from their new families. So yeah, the McGuads were disappointed, but they got it. They understood. And it didn't matter to them because it's like when your kid makes a mistake, what do? They're still your kid. And Janice is their kid. That's how they thought about it. Janice is our daughter. Of course, we're not going to turn our backs on her because she did something wrong. She just needs guidance. So after this little hiccup, the family focuses on rebuilding that trust. And it wasn't this, Janice, you made us lose our trust in you, so earn it back. It was more so the McGuads trying to comfort Janice, to reaffirm in her belief that they're family now and she never has to worry about food for as long as all of them live because she's family. After this incident, the family actually come out stronger than before, more bonded together. Gwen started tutoring Janice when everything went into remote learning. And December 10th of 2021, before the McGuad parents left for work, Janice turned to them and called them mom and dad. It was supposed to be a very, very, very good day. But there was a problem. Janice, their adopted daughter, whom they thought was legally categorized as an orphan, meaning without parents. Well, it turns out, Janice wasn't even an orphan. In fact, she was regularly communicating with her mom on Facebook.
What?
So what the hell is going on here? Back to the day of the murder, December 10th of 2021. I'm not sure how Cruz's coworker knew that the family home had been ransacked. Maybe he saw Janice's Facebook post or someone he knew had seen it. But Cruz rushes home, finds 2 of his children dead in the living room. He tries to check if there was anything, a small pulse or anything, but there was nothing. It said Cruz dropped to the ground and he cried out. He's religious. He cried out, "Lord, why did you have to take both of them? Why do I have to lose both of them? Why?" And then he collects himself as best as he can because he's still a father. He has to look for his 3rd child. So he's scrambling and he's praying that he wouldn't stumble across another dead body. And he calls her name out and finally he hears like the creaking of a door, like, you know, when you crack it open. And he hears her voice and he screams, "Janice!" And he runs to her room and he's putting his hands on her head and shoulders and arms. And he's frantically checking all over her to see if like she's hurt. She wasn't hurt, but she's dripping wet. And for a split second, he was panicked that it was blood. But it wasn't. It was water. We're going to come back to this
His
detail.
clothing too?
Her hair is like soaking wet in water. He made sure that she was okay, rushed them out, and he kept asking her, "Are you sure you're okay? Are you hurt? Why is your hair wet? Are you sure it's not blood? Are you bleeding anywhere?" Janice is like hyperventilating. She's explaining 3 men came into the house. They attacked Gwen and Boy Boy. She had enough time to run into her room. She hid under the bed. She was so terrified. The screams were so loud. There were so many screams. She was so scared. She knew that she couldn't help her siblings and she didn't know what to do or how to even do it. And then finally it went silent. She didn't know what to do. She was so stressed. She was having a panic attack. So the only thing that she could think to do in the moment was take a bath.
Take a bath?
Yeah, okay, so this whole bath thing is interesting, but we're gonna come back to it, okay? It's just very odd, because, you know, I know what you're thinking, and maybe we're on the same page, let me know, but I feel like a bath is very vulnerable. Like, when you're in a bath, you're naked and in a slippery, wet tub, defenseless. It just feels like the last thing you want to do in a situation where your environment doesn't feel secure. But again, people grieve differently. They respond to shock differently. Maybe she was in a state of shock where even her brain wasn't registering because, you know, our brains like to protect ourselves.
Yeah, I can't imagine like bath and shower, because even shower, like you close your eyes, you're in the water, you can't hear things well.
And then you got to get the towel. Like that's a horror movie.
And then bath too. It's just not, none of that makes sense.
And then the water filling up the tub is really loud typically. And it takes a while and you're like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. So Cruz comforts her. And honestly, he stayed strong for her because 2 of his children are dead. He keeps it together so that she doesn't break down further. He felt like she had already been through enough. Mrs. Magard Lavella arrives at the scene just after the police, and she sees Janice standing there, soaking wet, crying. And she rushes up, she hugs her, and she's like, "Oh my God, thank God you're okay. Are you all right? What happened? Where are Gwen and Boy Boy?" Cruz was the one to tell his wife and the mother of his children that their 2 kids were dead. Mrs. Magard Lavella is an elementary school principal. She was very loved for being this soft-spoken person. When you're an elementary school principal, you have to be calm, collected. You have to know what to do in the event of a crisis. You have to know how to handle these things. Kids, parents, staff, literally everyone trusted her to know what to do in every situation. But in this situation, there's like no answer. There's no solution. And it said that Mrs. Magwad completely broke down in every sense of the word. She was a broken woman and a broken mother. And I think Cruz, seeing his wife break down to the core like this, he had been holding it in for Janice. I think just seeing the devastation in his wife, he broke down. And so the 3 of them, they're outside the house crying in each other's arms, and the Magwad house was taped off as a crime scene. The police were really busy inside. They found like an abundance of evidence in the living room, just scattered everywhere. There were a few different things that could have been used as murder weapons. So there was this bloody baseball bat, a hammer, a few kitchen knives, including the one near the front door, pans, pots, shattered glass bottles, and they had to log all the evidence, take it all in, and they tried to match the weapons with the injuries on the siblings. Gwen had been stabbed to death And it seemed very personal. And we know this through all the cases that we've covered over the years, but when a killer stabs a person in the face, it's typically incredibly, incredibly personal. There is a level of hatred and cruelty, and oftentimes it can indicate that it comes from a place of jealousy. Like that's typically when you see that extensive injuries on the face. And her chest and abdomen, but a lot of wounds on her face, which you don't see necessarily in all stabbing cases. So the chest and the abdomen and sometimes the back, those are pretty common areas.
Yeah, because face is not to kill, right?
Face is just so personal. And again, to ruin someone's face, a lot of experts believe it stems from jealousy. So keep it in mind later. Gwen was stabbed multiple times, just face, chest, abdomen. She was missing an ear. She had wounds all over her arms and hands, indicating that she fought till her very last breath. Her hair was completely matted with dried blood. Louis' body was just as bad. The police counted 51 stab wounds on his body. Let me repeat that. 51 stab wounds on a 16-year-old's body. How can anyone ever hate a 16-year-old so much to stab them, even once? But 51 times? Like, it doesn't make sense. Their bodies were so badly damaged, the morgue workers had to physically sew the teenagers back together before their parents could hold a funeral. The investigators that were looking into the case, their initial working theory is that, okay, attackers came into the McGuad house since, they're going off of Janice's statements as well as the evidence. Maybe the attackers, they were looking to target one of the better off families in the area. They most likely thought that the house was going to be empty, but they came across the 3 McGuad children and all hell broke loose. That was the running theory. That was the very initial theory. But when they're taking log of everything at the crime scene, just laying around in plain sight, there are so many objects of value. TVs, phones, laptops. If these are thieves that are willing to kill teenagers, innocent children, I feel like they would steal on their way out. And it's not like they were hearing police sirens on their way. So very quickly, the angle of burglary gone wrong, it was dropped. The next runner-up as a theory was a family dispute over land. So Lavella had siblings, and there have been reports prior that Lavella and her siblings had gotten into these fights over land. Maybe some of the siblings were jealous enough to hurt the McGuads. Maybe they thought that they could get the McGuads to hand over some land if their children were now dead. But the evidence wasn't adding up with that either. I'm sure the police checked the alibis and the motives because in the end they ruled that theory out too. So now they're out of options. The family, the public, they all want answers. This is terrifying to every single family in the area. I think whenever children are involved, it's a huge, huge deal. And don't even get me started on what's going on in the US. But, when even children aren't safe, you feel like, what is wrong with society? We need to do something drastic now. People are demanding answers and change. They're in their homes. So the police, they form a special investigations unit focused on this crime, and the mayor puts up a reward for $5,000 for anyone with information that would lead to the arrest of the attackers. Meanwhile, the police go back to the crime scene. They're like, we got to search through everything again. This is how we're going to break this case wide open. They bring in forensics teams. They're combing through the place. And I'm not sure why they didn't follow up with some of these leads to begin with, but they finally decide. We got to search the perimeter of the house. Not just inside the house, not just the living room, but outside. And it's not just the backyard. They're going a little bit further than that. They're expanding their search scope. And that's when they come across this irrigation creek near the McGuad house. So it's like a small pond. And I guess since they weren't looking for a body or even a murder weapon, they just didn't think to search it until later. They got incredibly lucky. There in the creek was a little plastic bag. It felt like someone had tried to throw it down the creek and they assumed the water would carry it out, but the plastic bag got caught on a tree branch. So it's just stuck, swaying in the water. They drag it out and inside are bloody clothes. The killers after the murder had taken the time to change their clothes, put it in a little plastic baggie, tie it up, and throw it into the creek. Okay, now they're getting somewhere. So with this in mind, they're feeling a boost of confidence, okay? They start combing through the McGuad family house again, and they're searching for anything at all that might seem even remotely suspicious. Meanwhile, the netizens, they're doing their own little investigation. And, the police, they explored the burglary gone wrong theory, the land dispute theory, but there was one theory that nobody really wanted to be the first to say. Do you know what I mean? It just feels almost politically incorrect. It feels wrong. It feels cancelable to be like, we think the survivor did it. Like, even just saying that, that's crazy, right? I mean, normally I'm like, don't say it then. If you think you're going to get canceled, don't say it because you're probably, like, don't come up with these theories.
Wait, did people think of that right away?
Yeah, like, netizens were like, I don't really want to say it. They're trying to, like, come up with roundabout ways of being like, well, there's a few parts. Nobody wants to be like, I think the survivor killed them. The netizens did have some strong points, though. And normally I'm against these types of theories because more often than not, they're not true and it just ends up hurting the survivor even more. But I'm going to walk you through some of the biggest points of contention. Point 1, the freaking bath. The bath, okay, this was the weirdest part. This is the part in the case where immediately my little radars are going off. Like, it's very strange. When Cruz, the father, found her in her room after he found his 2 children murdered in the living room, he was just so happy that she was alive. He was so happy that she wasn't injured, but she's soaking wet. And she explains to him, once the screams of her siblings stopped, she took a bath because she was so nervous. Again, what an oddly vulnerable position to put yourself in when there were just 3 homicidal attackers in your home. I think that's even a nightmare to most people, being in a bath when intruders break in. You just don't feel safe and secured. That's why when you're like showering, you're trying to open your eyes and you're like, I gotta keep looking. Even Cruz said, when I heard that and when the shock of my kids passing wore off, I just couldn't stop thinking about that part. He didn't want to, but he couldn't help but wonder, like, why? Like, wouldn't a more natural reaction to be either run to your siblings' bodies, keep hiding under the bed until someone found you, or maybe even run out of the house? Netizens speculated in a very roundabout way initially that she took a shower to get all the blood off of her after she stabbed her siblings. And again, Louis was stabbed 51 times. That's just on his body. That's not including the injuries on Gwen's. Another point of contention was the fact that Janice didn't come downstairs when she heard Cruz yelling their names. The house isn't massive, and from where her bedroom was, I mean, she could hear him banging on the front door, screaming the kids' names, running around to the back of the house. She didn't even scream back. She didn't alert him that she was in the house. Nothing. She stayed hidden, and she didn't come out until she heard him come across his children's bodies in the living room. But there's bigger points to be made. The third point is the room that Janice hid in was ransacked. She said the attackers entered the room and they just didn't see her hiding under the bed, and they ransacked her entire room. I don't know. It's just kind of weird. And the house really isn't that big. So if she ran away when the attackers were already inside the house, wouldn't at least one of the 3 attackers had seen her run to her room? And one of the first places you would check is underneath the bed. Mm-hmm. So they just go into her room, ransack the room, and think, you know what? I'm sure she's not going to tell anyone what happened. It's weird. Also, she stated that she locked herself in the room and then hid under the bed. If the door was locked from the inside, how did the room get turned inside out? There were also droplets of blood that were inside of her room. And so she's arguing, yeah, because the attackers came into the room and ransacked the place. Of course, there's going to be droplets of blood because they were probably covered in blood, because look at how graphic the crime scene is. But it just wasn't making any sense. Then the last point of contention was Janice sent the message to her family group chat at 2:48 p.m., remember? After the autopsy, police discovered that the McGuad siblings' time of death was closer to 2 p.m. So what happened during those 50 minutes? This next one is a bit more speculative, but I'm still going to go over it. A lot of netizens were wondering how she was able to post a Facebook post spelled 100% correctly and including emojis. So the Facebook post begging for help because there were intruders in the house, that post included emojis. Just kind of strange. And on top of that, just a few minutes after posting on Facebook, she changed the last name to her profile to P, P-E-E. We don't know what P is. Her birth last name is Sibiel, and her adoptive last name is McGuad. I don't know what Janice P is.
Wait, after she made a post, she changed her last name?
Yeah. So you're telling me you're hiding under the bed and there's 3 knife-wielding attackers downstairs murdering your siblings, and you're like, I need to update my Facebook name, right now. I wonder, okay, this is, again, speculation time, but maybe in her 17-year-old mind, she thought that if her name wasn't Janice McGuad, the police couldn't find her profile. So, I think maybe she thinks the police are going to go and be like, oh, you know what? Let me just investigate this whole family. And, okay, Janice McGuad types it in Facebook. There's no Janice McGuad.
Was it Janice McGuad before?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay. She's trying to hide her name.
I mean, that's all they can think of in a 17-year-old's head. Because obviously, they're going to find you regardless.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm trying to think like a 17-year-old because it's so random. For now, these are just netizen theories and arguments. Meanwhile, the police would find droplets of blood in rooms of the house that just didn't make sense. Like the laundry room. There were droplets of blood there. But the laundry room shows no sign of struggle or anything. So the killers just walked in there, spattered some blood around from their clothes, and then walked out. Now, the police believe that they do an exhaustive search of the house and the crime scene tape comes down. And the McGuads were allowed back into their home to clean and tidy up. And I guess figure out what they wanted to do with the place. Mrs. McGuad felt like a zombie in this house. So while the police were investigating, all she did was cry and grieve and scream and then crawl up in a ball and then wait for the wave of emotions to hit again. And now she's back in the house. She's like, I just want to stay busy so that these floodgates don't open. She starts tidying up the areas and she starts with Janice's room. It's been ransacked. So this is Louie's old room. Mrs. McGuad starts going through and cleaning up and she stumbles across an ID. She's never seen this ID before. It doesn't belong to her children. She rushes to hand it over to the police, and since the ID belonged to a 17-year-old male, his name has not been identified to the press, but he's often referred to as Marlon, which is a pseudonym. Lavella did not know Marlon. She had never seen Marlon before in her entire life, so why is his ID in her house? Her neighbors had seen him before, though. The day of the murders, a few eyewitnesses came forward to say that they saw Marlon heading towards the McGuad residence. And it wasn't just neighbors. A store owner that was asked said Marlon came in and asked him which house belonged to the McGuads. A motorcycle driver said that he even drove Marlon to the McGuad house that day.
What?
So the police, they finally have their first big lead. And since Marlon's ID was found in Janice's room, they bring her in and they start questioning her. And when I say questioning, I mean that in the lightest sense possible. They're not interrogating her. They're just like, hey, we found this ID in your room. Do you recognize it? Do you know who this person is?
Wait, are they suspecting her at this point? Oh, okay.
They're just like, oh, we found this in your room. Maybe it's Louise. Maybe Louis had a friend, but we just want to know if you know. Just simply asking questions. And she's like, yeah, I know that person. They're kind of taken aback. I don't think that was the answer that they were expecting. They're like, oh, you know this guy? Yeah, I know him. And she breaks down and she says, I had something to do with the murders. In that interrogation room, in the presence of a lawyer, Janice admits that she and one other accomplice were the ones that murdered the McGuad siblings. Look, the admission itself was never released. All we know is that she admitted to it, but we don't know how active of a role she took. We don't know if she participated in the physical killing. I think most people suspect that she absolutely did, but we don't even know who her accomplice was, beyond the fact that everyone calls him Marlon. And that's not even a nickname. That's just an online pseudonym for him.
But is he caught though?
Yeah. So her and the 17-year-old, they're both caught. We know that he's 17. He works for the church. He worked as the person that sets up the church hall before service begins. And that's really the extent of what we know about him. We don't even know how the two met. What kind of relationship that they had. Netizens suspect that they were dating, which normally that sounds like a good theory, right? But it's weird because Janice's Facebook, she had pictures with another guy that she would refer to as her boyfriend, and it's not Marlon, apparently. Speaking of Janice's boyfriend, the police were able to track him down. They questioned him, make sure that he's not involved somehow. He wasn't. But he did say something that struck me as really weird, really interesting. He said that he saw Janice's Facebook post that day of her freaking out that there were intruders in the house. He saw it. He called her. She actually picked up the phone. But she didn't answer. She didn't respond. It was just silent on the other line. He didn't hear any strange noises or anything like that, so after a few seconds of silence, he just hung up. He assumed that nothing really bad was happening, maybe she was being dramatic. Okay, so this was odd to me. It strikes me as so strange. Either this guy is a really boyfriend, the world's worst boyfriend, or maybe Janice has a history of making bizarre claims. Or being dramatic. It's just really strange behavior. I can't imagine a world where your loved one or anyone posts like that on social media and you're just like, oh, well, it was silent when I called them. They're probably fine. Unless it's frequent? I don't know. The police immediately track down Marlon. They find out that he has a record. He was caught with illegal drugs not too long ago. And there wasn't even a chance to deny his connection with the McGuad murders because they found Gwen's phone in his bag when they arrested him. Now, this is where the case starts getting really, really strange. So at first, this was looking like a final girl situation, which if you guys know the final girl trope, it's a trope in slasher movies, horror movies, where one final girl at the end survives and she either confronts the killer or she lives to tell the tale. So a lot of people thought that this was like a final girl situation, but it went from that to being compared to the movie Orphan. Do you know which one I'm talking about? It's about this husband and wife who adopt a 9-year-old girl after they lose their baby. But the 9-year-old turns out to be a 33-year-old woman who is just hell-bent on killing the entire family. Side note, I know the movie Orphan was very controversial. A lot of adoption groups hated the depiction of murderous adoptees. And I think that there was even speculations that it affected adoption numbers for like a year or two. I don't think I can really give input on that or anything involving adoption because I don't know. I guess I was always in the belief that adoption is really good. But then recently I was seeing TikToks of adoptees saying that they feel a lot of resentment towards adoption centers and groups and their adoptive parents. And I'm like, okay, I know nothing about this world to say anything. But this case has been compared to the real life Orphan. And I just want to put a disclaimer. Just like any other case, there's bad people everywhere. Like you're going to take a group of people, you're playing a numbers game. There's going to be an evil man, an evil woman, an evil adoptee, an evil religious leader, an evil politician. They're all kind of evil in that little area, but you know what I mean? So don't take this case or any case as like, oh, this is why I'm scared of these people or these situations. So anyway, people pointed out the similarities between this case and the movie. Both girls were adopted by a family that was kind-hearted, financially stable. Both girls disguised their hatred and jealousy with like this super fake, sweet facade. But the similarities kind of end there. Janice is not an adult. Janice was a minor when she committed those crimes. So she was a child who killed 2 other children, just so that she could be the only child left.
Is that it? That's it?
That's the theory. We're gonna get to it. So, I mean, again, I do see why people keep comparing the 2 cases. It's human nature to draw these connections, but I will say, unlike the movie, Gwen and Louis were very real. Like, these are real people. So the McGuads thought Janice was a troubled orphan, looking for a chance at a better future, right? That's what they thought. But she wasn't even an orphan. Her parents weren't dead. They didn't abandon her. They weren't gone. In fact, she was still in contact with her mom at the point that she was adopted by the McGuads. Okay, Janice was born to a pretty rough environment, though. That much was true. Her parents, Michelle and Juanito, they didn't have much. Most of their meals growing up as a family consisted of just eating sweet potatoes, not even 3 times a day, like maybe once every 4 days just to feel full. Sometimes they would eat sweet potato leaves if they didn't have any more sweet potatoes left, or they would ask their neighbors and beg them for rice or eat almost rotten bananas. So Janice did not have a normal childhood. She was never carefree. Her dad was always getting drunk and upset that they didn't have money. And Janice was found on a boat in 2013. Now, it's hard to say if she was abandoned, like she claims, or if she left her family willingly. But she's found on the boat. She lies about not having parents. Maybe she was embarrassed. Maybe her parents were dead to her after everything that happened. I don't know. I think this part we can sympathize with, right? Like her childhood. And maybe even the fact that she lied to everyone about her parents abandoning her. In a way, maybe she did feel abandoned by them. Either way, it's speculated that she just wanted to be taken in by the McGuads. But all this trauma, all this hurt started resurfacing when she saw how loving the McGuad family was. She saw how they doted on Gwen and Louis and they protected their kids and loved them and helped them grow into good people. And Gwen was beautiful, smart, kind, and it's suspected by netizens that Gwen was everything that Janice wanted to be. And so the more comfortable that Janice got with the privilege that the McGuad family could give her, the less content she was getting. The McGuads were loving, but they were strict. So when Janice was adopted, she got her own house duties and chores, just like Gwen and Louis had. And this isn't some like Cinderella situation where they're giving her all this work and they're like, you're the adopted kid, you better do it all. The McGuads were fair. The problem, though, was Janice was used to living by her own rules now. She just wanted all the positives of living with the McGuads. She didn't really care for the negative parts. She also saw how much the McGuad parents adored Gwen and Louis, and she didn't like that. But the crazy thing is, they gave Janice the same love. Like, from the minute that they adopted her, Janice was treated like a member of the family, to an extent where people around them thought that Janice was a cousin that they had taken in. But Janice was not content. She just wanted all of it. Mr. McGuad thinks that's the reason his children are dead. He said, based on her confession, she was jealous and envious, and she hated our daughter Gwen because of the love we showered her with. But the netizens are confused because even if she saw all the love Gwen is getting, she also has love. Like, love is not a finite resource. How can someone be greedy enough for something like parental affection to kill their siblings? To add weight to the theory of this motive, remember how she called the McGuad parents mom and dad for the first time the morning of the murders? Mm-hmm. Now in hindsight, that could allude to her jealousy and her belief that she would soon be their only daughter. Yeah. And I think it's the feeling of maybe Janice felt like she could never compete with Gwen and Louis because these are the birth kids. And so maybe she felt like the only way to truly be their daughter was to get rid of the birth kids. So Janice admitted to being involved in the murders, and the theory of why she did it is still being debated, but I feel like up until this point, even for the McGuads, it felt, okay, it doesn't feel excusable or even understandable, but from a psychological standpoint, it seemed, like, you know what I mean? It kind of made sense psychologically. Not in the sense that any murder makes sense. Like, all murders are senseless. But I guess psychologically speaking, everyone was like, I think I can connect the dots. I think I see where this is going. Everyone's like, oh, she's feeling this intense jealousy, never having loving parents. She wants all the love to herself. She's intensely jealous. This is the only way to not be in competition with the birth kids. She gets them out of the picture. That's what we thought. And then the police find text messages in her phone. They're in Tagalog, but they've been loosely translated to English. The identity of the person she's texting hasn't not been released, but we can kind of assume that it's Marlon. In the text, Janice says, there are 7 people I want to kill. I won't tell you who they are now because you might report me, but this is all I have left to do before I can finally get the freedom I want. He texted back, don't do it yet. Think about it first, then do it when you learn how to. They both laugh, and she texts him back, I think I can do it now. Tell me, do you think anyone would still take me or accept me if I ever do kill someone? Isn't there a saying that no matter how big your sins are, even if you killed someone, the Lord will still forgive you? You just have to ask for it, right? Hell, I mean, even soldiers kill people, so I should be allowed to. You're crazy, Janice. But for me, it's okay because I have someone special who will still love and accept me, even if I do end up killing someone. Janice says, I'm being serious. I want to be a Marine. Yeah, she wanted to be a Marine, okay? And he says, soldiers don't kill people who wouldn't kill them first. I just want to finally be happy and do what makes me happy. Same. I want to not worry about the people around me anymore. Janice gets upset and she says, whatever, if you don't want to do it with me, then I'll just find someone else who will. I just can't take my surroundings anymore. It's not healthy for me. Same. Haha. Don't you have anything better to say than just same? Anyway, can you imagine it? I think it'll be fun to kill someone. The other person asks again, who do you want to kill? Let's make a list. I don't want to tell you though yet, because you might report me to the authorities.
This is all while she was living with them?
Yeah. So I don't really know if I believe in this whole, like, I wanted to be the only loved one. Not that that's even more excusable, but I feel like there's a financial motive. There's something. On December 16th, 6 days after the murders, both Janice and Marlon were arrested. They weren't sent to jail because they're minors. They were both taken into basically like a juvenile facility. And
wait, so what's going on with her
Yes.
mom? You're saying she's still talking to the mom?
yeah, her mom has no idea what's going on with her. I guess the mom is like, okay, you're just off to fend for yourself. And they would just keep in contact through Facebook. So her mom was a mom. Speaking of Janice's mom, she would actually meet with the McGuad parents. She would look for them, and she ran into them at Gwen and Louis' cemetery. So Michelle, Janice's mom, approached them, and she got down on her knees and said, I'm so sorry. Every time I see their photos, I can't hold my tears back. I feel how you feel. Lavelle lifted the woman back into a standing position so that they were eye to eye, and she said, you don't need to kneel. If only I could make you feel how painful it is, but I don't have the courage to do that. All I want and all I'm asking you is, maybe you're the one person that can get her to tell the truth of what really happened. Michelle, Janice's mom, tried to go meet with Janice, but she was not allowed to see her. So the killers were tried separately. So they were tried for the murder of Louis and for Gwen separately. One for Louis, one for Gwen. And when this first sentence came out, it was insane. Oh, speaking of, while they were at this juvenile center, they're provided with like activities. It doesn't even seem like prison. They're going through therapy. They have activities to keep them not bored. And while they're at the center, Janice, for lack of a better word, she gave everyone there the creeps. She would just sit in her cell quietly, never made small talk, no interest in anything, just sitting there watching everyone. The other kids there were so scared they asked to be transferred to a different room. So the first sentence came out, and the 2 killers would receive 10 years each for the murder of one McGuad sibling. So there was still another trial left, but the public and the McGuad parents, they were outraged. Like, how can someone get only 10 years in prison for taking another life, for taking the life of a child? It said the sentence was light because in the Philippines, the criminal age of responsibility is 15, meaning if you're younger than 15, you get no legal liability, just rehabilitation, but Janice was 17. So between the ages of 15 and 18, the criminal sentence would be rehab until they reached 18. Basically, they're going easy on them because they were minors when the crimes happened.
That's freaking crazy.
Yeah, the McGuad parents were not happy at all with this sentence. Neither was the public. Cruz and Lavella, they started giving media interviews, talking to officials. They went on national TV, and They just wanted to put pressure on the judicial system. Lovella admitted something really heartbreaking in these interviews. She said that because of her religion, she was actually willing to forgive Janice. She said she was trying to be understanding, and she felt like Janice, in her eyes, was a victim in her own life. You know, a victim of the system, a victim of circumstance, poverty, the lack of education. She said she wanted to forgive Janice. I mean, this woman is so strong. But then one day, Janice was taken into custody, and Lovella was there, and the two made eye contact. Janice was looking at the woman who gave her love and support and who treated her like her own children. She looked at the parents of her two victims, and her face was completely blank. No remorse, no guilt, not even anger or sadness or confusion, just cold indifference. And that was when Lovella changed her mind. She said, "We were so proud when we adopted Janice because we thought God was using us to help this young girl. It was a blessing, but then this is what we get." Then she turned and she addressed Janice through the screen and she said, "Is this how you repay us after all we did for you? Does Gwyn deserve this after convincing us to take you in?" After seeing how little Janice cared about killing Gwyn and Louis, Lovella no longer wanted to forgive Janice. There was a lot of outrage sparked because of this case. You know, one of the arguments was recently the age of criminal responsibility had been raised from 13 to 15 in the Philippines. So a lot of people were debating that. People were debating the fact that Janice was taken into basically CPS in the Philippines and they didn't do anything. So they said that Janice was produced as a killer by the system. Like, they should have been able to support her in a way that she didn't have to kill someone, that she didn't have to end up in this situation. And another thing is, they were just kind of confused. If Janice had a mom, CPS didn't know that, and they legally let the Magwads adopt her? Like, that's crazy. So finally the day comes. Janice and Marlon receive the second sentence, and for the murder of the second Magwad sibling, both of them would receive 22 years in jail. So with this sentence and the last one combined, the killers would spend about 32 years in prison, no chance of parole. And the sentence isn't huge compared to other cases we've covered, and the Magwads weren't satisfied with the final verdict. Their children were dead, but the killers would be able to walk out of prison in their 50s. They would have half their life left to live. Half a life that the Magwad siblings would never get to have. The Magwad parents, they went to therapy, and they are in their healing process. They've opened up a restaurant in remembrance of Gwyn and Louis. They opened their doors August of 2022. They painted the walls like this beautiful red and yellow color, and they named it Casa M&M. They serve rice dishes and even offer like a dessert bar. So now everyone that eats at this restaurant, they have a chance to experience just the love and the warmth and the compassionate nature of the Magwads. And despite all the hurt, the Magwad parents seem to be doing as best as they can be. I think they're finding a lot of strength in their community. And I just hope one day they find happiness again. And that has been the viral case of the Magwad murders. What are your thoughts? Please stay safe. I'll see you guys on Sunday for the mini-sode. Bye.
Bada bing, bada boo.
Dr. Tahir is a therapist that normally doesn't do house calls. But when you get a call from a wealthy business tycoon that holds a ton of influence and power in the area, you're gonna go. He didn't even just go alone, okay? Dr. Tahir brought 5 of his other employees from his clinic. The call was for the rich business tycoon's son, who was holed up in the mansion and going through something. It was very vague. The business tycoon was on vacation. He didn't give the therapist much to go off of. So when the team, the squad really, of therapists, they get to the home, they find out that the son is unwilling to let them in. So they wait outside for like 30 minutes before the dad calls back and is like, "You know what? I've got a ladder in the shed. Just break into the house." I'm not sure what they were expecting. Maybe they were expecting the patient to be on the ground, refusing to leave the house. Maybe they're having a panic attack. I really don't know. Maybe they're having a psychotic episode. That's not what they got. When all 6 of them entered the home, the son ran up to them, knife in hand, and jammed it up the chin of one of the employees. The knife went through the therapist's chin, jaw, mouth, and pierced his tongue, so upwards. He pulled the knife out, blood squirted everywhere, and the other therapists, they're like, "Okay, now we're gonna fight for our lives to make sure that this patient is subdued." They're grabbing blankets, tying him up. It's taking forever to just get this man under control. He's got a gun, he's got a knife, he's got all these other weapons. Finally, when they get him on the ground tied up, that's when they saw the body of a young woman, a diplomat's daughter, tortured and murdered. Her body was laying in a pool of blood, and her head was found detached 3 feet away from her body. The patient would later state, "What? She wanted to be." Always, full show notes are available at rottenmangopodcast.com. This case does take place in Pakistan, and we had multiple Urdu-speaking researchers help assist in gathering of the facts. There's a few points in the story where it's more speculative than factual because there were no eyewitnesses present during these key moments. So I'm going to try and present all the possible scenarios, and you can make up your mind on which you believe occurred. The Jaffer family in Pakistan could be on their own episode of Succession, really. Mr. Jaffer was an influential, wealthy business tycoon. His company specialized in massive construction projects, and it said that he had big military contracts, which anyone who's doing contracts with the military, automatically I'm like, these people are richer than beyond belief. He lived in this modern guard-gated house with his wife and his 2 sons. They even had a whole staff to manage the home. Housekeepers, gardeners, kitchen staff, security staff. I really have no idea how deep their money runs. I can't find a net worth anywhere, but they do kind of give off that new money vibes. And I don't mean that in like a harsh, weird, derogatory way, but in the sense that, they love to throw a good high society party. So during the weekdays, the family would focus on business. Everyone kind of did their own thing. Mr. Jaffer was always on business trips, doing big deals. Meanwhile, his 2 sons, they're living complete opposite lives. Okay, so on the weekends, they would throw these lavish dinner parties. Staff would be carrying in these giant vases of fresh flowers. The kitchen would be busy with teams of chefs crafting out the most elaborate seasonal recipes. And one by one, these rich families would just trail into the mansion. Some of them are old money families. Some of them are new money, respectable, influential families. And oftentimes they would bring their kids with them to introduce, to mingle amongst each other while the parents, talk business. So these kids, they are true socialites. Most of them had gone abroad for schooling, whether it be in the US or Europe. They were all well-traveled, well-spoken, and very well-funded. And I'm sure, naturally, it becomes this unspoken competition amongst the parents. Whose kid just got accepted into that prestigious university abroad? Oh, whose kid just snowboarded with a celebrity in Switzerland? Whose kid is the most well-read? The Jaffers had 2 sons, but you would really only hear them talking about one. Zahir, crown jewel of the family. Even though he was the firstborn into the family of business tycoons, he wanted to study psychology. That's what intrigued him. He wanted to help people. So he gets his certification to be a counselor at a high-profile mental health organization called Therapy Works. He gave lectures and conducted counseling sessions for students in Pakistan. He held these mental health awareness sessions in well-known schools. I believe he even tried his hand on one-on-one counseling. But he still made time to work with his family. Whenever they needed him, he was the chief brand strategist at his dad's company at one point. He was born in the US, grew up in Pakistan. Before he started studying abroad, he was fluent in English and in Urdu, and he was the golden son, the golden child. So whenever the Jaffers boasted about their child's accomplishments, it was this son. The other one was kind of like the black sheep of the family. They tucked him away, closed the door, and he was the family secret. They never talked about him in public. It's like he didn't even exist. They honestly couldn't even comprehend how he was part of their picture-perfect family. He was admitted into a psych ward in his late teens, early 20s, diagnosed with schizophrenia, which, yes, is a very serious, life-altering diagnosis, but it's something that can be treated. I mean, we've seen so many people time and time again get treated for something like this and live very healthy, productive lives. But when he was sent to therapy, nothing was working. And it wasn't even his mental health that was the problem. It was because he was addicted to meth. So of course, nothing the therapist could do could really make a dent on his progress if he was addicted to meth. It was reported that he would allegedly have induced psychosis while studying abroad. At one point, he was even deported out of the United Kingdom for assaulting his own mother and potentially being involved in sexual harassment and SA cases in the UK.
Wow.
So yeah, the Jaffers never really talked about him. They only talked about perfect Zahir, who's now in his mid to late 20s. So he's like 27-ish. And he should start thinking about settling down. That's what they're thinking. You know, the parents started using these high society gatherings almost as a way to see if there was anyone that they could pair with their heir. Noor was one of the most respected, quote, kids at these dinner parties. She is the daughter of a former Pakistan diplomat. Her father was not just a very well-known, but also a very well-respected person in the political realm, which is, you know, pretty difficult to accomplish. And like all the socialite kids that would be invited to these parties, Noor was also very well-traveled. She lived most of her childhood in Ireland. She had an Irish accent. She went to school all over the world, even in South Korea. She was actually admitted into Ewha University, which is one of the most prestigious colleges in South Korea. She studied in the US, just to name a few. She attended she loved studying. It's kind of weird, but it's not that she loved the act of studying. It's not even like that she loved grades. She was very interesting in the sense that she liked to acquire knowledge. She was genuinely passionate about learning new things. On top of that, she's a human rights activist, always attending local marches, rallies, very vocal for the causes that she believed in. So if we're talking about on-paper stats, Noor is as perfect as it gets. Educated, religious, activist, conventionally beautiful, kind-hearted, family-oriented, studious, the daughter of a diplomat, you know? And she could even bake on top of that. So it would make sense that Zahir would feel like, oh, you know what? I think Noor would be a great match for me. Zahir's parents seem to agree. This would be the perfect wife for their heir. They meet at one of these dinner parties, and it's pretty unclear when exactly they started dating or even getting to know each other, but sources state that Zahir struck up a friendship with Noor first. They become friendly, and they officially become a couple in 2018. They had that typical YA novel love story. Yeah. Zahir was like this rich, shy, kind of reserved person, but people said that Noor would bring out his spontaneous and fun side. And they're like, wow, Zahir actually cracks jokes. This is my first time hearing it. It's so interesting. Noor was also someone that didn't really care for money. I mean, she understood the value of hard work behind money. She wasn't one of those people that is like, oh, money doesn't buy happiness. No, she understood, but she just wasn't the type to spend a ton of money on material goods. And everyone could see why Zahir was obsessed with Noor. She was a little different. I don't want to say different because it makes it sound like she's a pick-me, and she's not a pick-me. She's actually a girl's girl. She had a girl gang. That's what they called it. I mean, her best friends, all of her friends were girls, and she would do anything for them. But she was just very interesting. The way that everyone describes her is very passionate about everything. Like, it's hard to keep up with her. You know, there's a few topics that I know a lot about, or I think I like to talk about, right? Noor loved talking about everything. I mean, she would come up to you bubbling with excitement to talk about the history of different countries' flags and the meaning behind each color of countries that aren't even on the same continent, and then turn around and just excitedly talk to you about how she discovered the perfect oven temperature for soft yet crunchy macaroons. And you're like, okay, this is a very multifaceted person. She had a lot of niche interests, which I think is incredibly charismatic. And Noor would do this thing, and it was kind of a running joke between everyone. She would go to the store every single week and buy these Nando's Peri Bites. They're like snacks. So imagine they're like chips. They've got a little kick to them. Little, like, tiny bit spicy. She would get so excited, sit down, pop open the bag, take a bite, and excitedly say, oh my gosh, too spicy. But then her hand would be right back in the bag grabbing another one. And this would happen every single week, every time she went to the store. And all of her friends are like, just stop eating the snack. But she loved it. And everyone loved watching her eat the snack because it's the same reaction every single time. And so, yeah, Zahir is completely, utterly infatuated with her during the initial stages of their relationship. I'm pretty sure it was mutual. Noor fell pretty hard for Zahir as well. And it's speculated that the Jaffers were really happy about the two dating. Noor was really a good catch for Zahir. They just hoped that she would never meet their other son. Zahir did a pretty good job keeping that side of him away from dinner parties. But how long could he really hide it? Zahir Jaffer was the only son and heir to the Jaffer family fortune. He doesn't have a brother. He is a complicated person. Zahir was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and while being treated, he earned his counseling certifications. He went from being a patient to a therapist at Therapy Works.
I see. So he did all of that.
All of that. He was
on the outside, he's like a perfect son.
The good son, the golden child. Everyone's like, wow, how did we get a son like Zahir?
Wow.
On the outside, he's reserved, polite, treated those around him with the utmost respect, but he also occasionally assaulted his mom. He only ever spoke highly of women in public, but he also messaged female acquaintances things like, I will titty f you till I slice off your breasts and nipples. He would call female acquaintances faces and bimbotic hoes.
To who?
Like his childhood acquaintances. Girls that he grew up with. And
Just
they would lose
for no
touch.
reason?
Yes, they would lose touch. And then, they might be Facebook messaging and he's like, oh, when are you coming to town? And then he would just bombard them with these crazy messages. And obviously, these women did not respond kindly to his messages because why would they? He would throw slurs at them. He would ask them if they liked performing services on male private parts. It was just really bad. But Noor didn't see any of this. She did not see this side of Zahir until it was too late. There's actually a video of them that has since gone viral. They're dancing together at a friend's wedding, and they honestly look like the perfect type of couple, like the type of couple that people would be jealous about. The wedding itself is lavish, it's grand, and you can tell that these kids that are having fun are part of influential, wealthy, affluent families. It feels perfect. It feels like one of those romance novels. They look like they're in love. Soon after, Zahir would behead Noor. Zahir had a one-way ticket to New York City at 3:50 a.m. So he was going to leave. He's like, bye, Pakistan. I'm going back to the US. So while the rest of the city slept, he would be getting on a plane, getting ready to start this new chapter of his life. But he's thinking, is that really what I want? It's kind of bittersweet. I'm sure a part of him was excited, and then another part of him is like, what about this life I'm leaving behind? So he picked up his phone and he called the person that he wanted to see most before leaving. July 18th of 2021, Noor was very busy. She's prepping for Eid al-Fitr, which is a Muslim holiday, and she was spending time with her mom, helping her prep food in the kitchen, and she gets this phone call. She excuses herself. It was Zahir. They hadn't spoken in 6 months since their breakup. They've been pretty no contact. So after 3 years of dating, they broke up and she's randomly getting a call at like 9 p.m. It was pretty rough for Noor, the breakup, but she knew she was making the right choice. Her friends kept reassuring her, we always thought that he was a little too controlling. At first he was so sweet, but I don't know, he just gives me bad vibes. To give you some context, both Noor and Zahir are Muslim, but Noor was a lot more devoted to her faith than Zahir, and it became a problem when Zahir would... Okay, so it was speculated that Zahir was the one that encouraged her and if not demanded that she stop wearing her burqa. Eventually, Noor would break up with him, and now 6 months later, he's calling out of the blue and she doesn't know what for. She picks up the phone and he tells her that he's leaving for the US tonight. In about 7 hours to be exact, he would be on a flight to New York City. It's a one-way ticket. He doesn't know when he's going to be back. So this is at around like 9 p.m. Technically, his flight is the next day at around 3:30 in the morning. And you ask her, is there any way at all that we can just say goodbye one last time? For closure, I mean, we did date for 3 years. I just want to see your face one last time, one final goodbye. Noor agreed to meet up with him, but to avoid ruining such special holidays with her parents, she just told them, I'm gonna briefly go visit a friend, okay, and I'll be right back. She knew that if she told them that she was gonna go say goodbye to Zahir, it would be this whole conversation. Her parents would say, absolutely not. So she's like, okay, let me just go. She goes to meet up with him at a local plaza. She leaves the house at around 9:05 p.m., gets to the plaza like 40-ish minutes later, and she texts him, where are you? I'm not sure what excuse he made, but he requests that she come to his house instead to say goodbye. Maybe he was like, I'm not done packing yet. I'm so busy, right? My flight's in a few hours. Noor hesitated, but she's very familiar with Zahir's home. I mean, she knew that it was never empty either. I mean, but also when you're meeting your ex-boyfriend that you dated for 3 years, that's not really a concern of yours. But let's say it was, his home is never empty. Even when there is no dinner party, even when there's no crazy socialite gathering, there's almost always 2 to 3 home staff on site. A guard, a chef, some housekeeper of sorts. So by 10 p.m., she pulls up to the tall gates that are around his modern mansion, and the house is lit up, so nothing about it is alarming. I mean, the house has CCTV cameras on the outside too. She was let in by the guard on site, and Noor's arrival would trigger a series of very peculiar events. Because we don't know exactly what went down at the exact time once she entered that home, but we have a little bit of tidbits of information. A little after 10 p.m., so almost right after Noor arrived, Zahir makes multiple calls to his travel agent asking to cancel the flight that's coming up in 5 hours.
So as soon as she arrived?
Yeah. And the travel agent is telling Zahir, I don't really think that's going to be possible. You're flying out in a few hours. There's no way that I can cancel your flight and refund you your money because it doesn't really work like that. Zahir then requested to change his flight. Instead of leaving in a few hours, he wanted to depart to America in 10 days. But again, that was just too tricky because you can't just change your flight ticket without paying some sort of penalty or fine from the airline just hours before your flight. So when Zahir's agent is expressing all of these different issues with him, he tells her, okay, fine, I'll just keep my flight the same. At 11 p.m., a scheduled taxi arrives at Zahir's house to take him to the airport. He booked this ride when he initially booked his ticket, so this has been scheduled for a while. Clearly, he's having second thoughts about going to New York. He calls the taxi driver that's sitting outside of the gates of his house, and Zahir tells him, sorry, I'm still packing. Do you mind waiting a little bit? The driver waited 36 minutes. Zahir called him once more. Okay, just wait a little bit longer. Hold on. On the third call with the taxi driver, Zahir tells him, you know what, I canceled my plans to go to the airport, but I'll still pay you. So one of the guards will bring out money since I made you wait. But anyway, bye. The pay was very generous. I think the cab driver made double what he would have made on a standard drive back and forth from the airport. So as a token of appreciation, the driver calls Zahir and says, hey, if you change your mind about going to the airport tonight or even tomorrow, you already paid me, so I can give you a lift anytime. 2 hours later, at around 2 a.m., Zahir calls that cab driver and says, you know what? Maybe you can take me to the airport. I have no idea the distance between his home and the airport, but this seems pretty tight for an international flight. Because I would imagine that now it's what? Like 1, 2 in the morning. His flight is at like 3:30.
Yeah, that's too tight.
Yeah, because even if it's like a 30-minute drive, it's pretty tight. So this is when the cab driver starts feeling like, ooh, something's not right here. Zahir comes out of the house with his luggage and with a woman. The driver helps Zahir put the luggage in the trunk and he notices a few things. 1, the woman is barefoot. They're going to an airport. I don't even think you can be let on a plane without shoes. 2nd, once they get in the car, the driver notices that Zahir is talkative and seems normal, but this woman is just silent. She doesn't seem like she's peacefully just enjoying the drive. She seems out of it. And she's silent. She doesn't say a single word, doesn't even respond when Zahir speaks to her. 3rd, in the middle of the drive, Zahir abruptly requests that they turn around and head back to his house instead of the airport. It was sudden. There was no prior conversation about this. There was no, oh man, I don't think we're going to make it in time. It's just, turn around. Too late.
What?
Trevor's like, okay, this is so weird, but he's still getting paid for it, so I guess. He U-turns it around, parks the car in front of Zahir's home, and watches him take his luggage in one hand and a firm grip on the woman with his other hand. It's weird. But his years of being a cab driver, I mean, they taught him a few things. One of them being, everything is weird at 3 a.m. He takes one last look at the house, gets back in his car, and starts making his way to his next drive. It's stated that Zahir proposed to Noor that night instead of flying out to New York City. She rejected him. So now she had to die. For the next 48 hours behind the tall gates and cold concrete walls, Zahir would hold his ex-girlfriend, the daughter of a diplomat, captive and torture her to death. We don't have an exact timeline of the torture, but we do know what injuries she sustained. Sometime after being dropped off by the taxi, Zahir tries to keep getting Noor to accept his proposal, is the speculation. She keeps refusing, so the torture begins. It's said that he punched her repeatedly with brass knuckles.
Oh, like those fighter...
Yes, that you put on your...
gosh.
Yes. He beat her with the back of a pistol, mentally tortured her by threatening to shoot her. There were shallow cuts on the back of her knees, and it's speculated that she tried to run off, and he would cut the back of her knees to make it difficult for her to walk or run. There were bruises all over her body, but particularly her inner thighs. Noor had been essayed by Zahir. There was also bruising on her head as if she had been hit multiple times with a very sharp object. This lasted for 2 days. And on that very last day of torture, Zahir takes out his Swiss Army knife, which Swiss Army knives are not that long. The longest ones that I could find online were about 5 inches, not even, so think shorter than the length of most phones. He used that knife to try and attack Noor. She pushed back, dug her nails into him, and that pissed him off. He starts stabbing her, but they were all very shallow cuts because the knife was on the shorter side. And I don't want that to make it sound like I'm downplaying her injuries. They were very, very painful cuts. She's losing a lot of blood. There was blood all over the room, the walls, the floor, but none of the stab wounds themselves were fatal. Noor was stabbed over a dozen times. Noor ended up fainting, and at this point, Zahir starts to choke her. He kept choking her until she was no longer moving, and then he took his knife, and I saw no other reports that stated that any other knife was used during the crimes, so we can assume that it's the 5-inch Swiss Army knife. He took that after Noor had passed and started to detach her head. I imagine that it must have taken a while. We do know at least that Noor has passed, so she wasn't feeling at least the physical pain of this. And when he was done, he kicked her head a few times. Her head was found 3 feet away from her body. And this detail really, I don't even know how to digest this information. It's a mixture of this violent child that's throwing some sort of sick tantrum mixed with the literal devil that won't even spare someone in their death. That has just such little remorse and respect for not even an individual in particular, but just the sanctity of life in general. Zahir Jaffer had just killed his ex-girlfriend for rejecting him, and he was plotting to get away with it. July 20th, 2022. This is the day of Noor's murder. So we can presume that she's already dead when he makes these new series of phone calls. A family friend of Zahir's gets a phone call around dinner time. This is a middle-aged man. He picks it up, and he doesn't even have Zahir's number, so he has no idea why Zahir is calling him. To give you some context, this family friend wants to remain anonymous, but he's friends with Zahir's dad. But apparently, he's not even that close to Zahir's dad. He's not even that close of a family friend. He didn't grow up with Zahir. He doesn't know Zahir like that. I mean, they're on cordial, polite terms, but they're definitely more like acquaintances. So it's just kind of odd that Zahir was calling him out of the blue. Hey, Zahir, what's going on? Do you need something? And Zahir's just telling him, yeah, something terrible happened. Come to my house immediately. Well, you have to tell me what happened. Like, are you all right? What's going on? Robbers raided the house. I'm all alone. My parents aren't home. Please come quickly. Yeah, okay, let me see what I can do. The family friend throws his jacket over his shoulder, pats his pockets, make sure he has his keys. And just as he's about to walk out that door, he's literally about to pull on the door handle. He stops dead in his tracks. Something's not right. Zahir has never called him before. Zahir shouldn't even really have his number. He doesn't even know how he got his number. They almost never interacted. And if he was being robbed, why wouldn't he call the cops, call his parents, call anybody but him? I mean, he's not even like part of the military or the police or anything. Like, he's a random businessman.
Yeah.
He's not even that close to the family. So he's like, okay, even if I go to Zahir's house, then what? Like, what could I possibly do for Zahir?
Yeah, so what? He said there's a robber in the house?
There was a robbery. And he's very vague about it.
Okay.
And he pulls out his phone and he calls Zahir's dad. And he lets him know, hey, I just got a call from your son. I don't know, apparently your house has been robbed and he's alone. I don't know what's going on, but I think that you should try and figure it out. This is when everything just kind of descends into full-blown chaos. It's a giant game of telephone where only a few people know how sick and twisted the truth is. Zahir's dad got right to work after this phone call, but he doesn't handle it in the way that you would imagine. So from call logs, we know that Zahir and Zahir's dad were in constant communication the day of the murder. So if there truly was a robbery, which there wasn't, Zahir's dad probably would have been the first to know about it. But let's say he didn't. He's out of town. He's a smart businessman. He's a wealthy tycoon. What do you think the best thing to do is? Call the police. Have them sent over to the house where his son would be found traumatized after an alleged home invasion. That was not the choice that Zahir's dad made. Zahir's dad starts calling up random family friends telling them, there was a robbery at our house. They took paintings and my precious ornaments. They beat my son.
What?
And all the family friends are like, why are you calling me right now with this? I mean, like, I feel bad, but like, what could I do?
Yeah.
In another call, he told a family friend, my son was robbed. He was at the house when the robbers invaded. My son killed a robber. How can I get rid of the body? Which to me is very telling. Zahir's dad knows that there's a dead body in that house. Zahir's dad told multiple family friends that there was a robbery at his house and Zahir was a victim. And then he turns around and calls Therapy Works, the counseling center that Zahir used to be a patient and later started working for. Zahir's dad calls the CEO, the main therapist, with a very strange request. He asks Dr. Tahir, a psychologist, quickly, please go to my house. My son is trying to solicit a girl. I know, you just cocked your head, okay? Obviously, Dr. Tahir is having the same reaction as us. He asks the dad on the phone, I'm sorry, what do you mean solicit a girl? Like, is he with a sex worker? Because is he soliciting sex work? Like, what? That phrase is so weird. And like, I don't know if you would call a therapist if that was the real situation of what was going on.
Yeah.
And he said Zahir's dad responded so calmly, almost with like a chuckle in his voice. Tahir, well, you know what I mean. You're a smart man. Something like that. Something like that. Something like that. What does that even mean? Something like that. Dr. Tahir claims he had no idea what was going on. This is the only information he claims he was given. He gathers a team of 6 workers from the clinic. And, okay, the presumption here is that Zahir's parents invested in or heavily funded the clinic. So he was just kind of in the pocket of Zahir's dad. So he had to go. Otherwise, I think he would have just been like, you're very strange, sir. Maybe you should come in for a session.
Yeah, but why is he gathering 6 people? Like, what is he trying to do?
We don't know. So that's why people think they must have known about it. Some people say, no, maybe he just wants backup for whatever reason because he knows that Zahir was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Some people say, no, he knew from that phone call what was already going on. And he gathered a team to help him clean the mess. But we don't know, okay? We don't know. So they gather up a team of 6 workers from the clinic and they start heading over to the Jaffer mansion. They get there. I don't know what they're expecting, but they seem to be a little confused because there's already another group gathered outside the house.
What?
The group also seems very confused. They're like, we don't know what on earth is going on. We're Zahir's friends. Zahir's been calling us all day saying that it was a robbery, he was in a life or death situation, and that we needed to bring our own personal guards. So these are all rich kids. They all have like family guards.
Okay.
So many people are outside of Zahir's home and half of them are under the impression that there's a scary robbery that just happened. The other half, the clinic's team, they're under the impression that Zahir is in there with a woman and something is happening. Someone's being solicited. Yet nobody calls the police. The therapist, all 6 of them, just stood there outside for half an hour. Finally, they decide to take a ladder and try to break into the house. But at that point, it would be too late. Noor would already be dead. See, the interesting thing, though, about families like this, like I said, everybody already has a guard, right? Is they all have house staff. So where are Zahir's house staff? Why couldn't they just come out and explain what's really going on to the confused crowd? Or why couldn't they just, I don't know, let the therapy workers into the house instead of having them climb up a ladder and break into the home? There were 3 house staff present during the past 2 days: a gardener, a cook, and a security guard. For 2 days, they heard Noor's screams and they didn't do anything. And I get that this is their employer, and I get that they must have been terrified of what could happen if you go up against a family like this. But this is 2 days. It's not even a split-second choice that you make, but for every second of those 48 hours, they made the choice to not save Noor. Noor tried to escape 6 times. During the torturous 48-hour ordeal, 6 times. Had a single one of the staff just stood their ground or helped her or looked the other way, they could have saved her life. But instead, the staff prevented her from leaving. The house was like a total lockdown torture chamber.
So they're part of the murder.
Yeah. In one instance, it's dark outside, around 2:41 a.m. Noor was seen on the home security cameras running barefoot towards the main house gate. She had made it out of the house alive, but the security guard locked the gate to prevent her from escaping.
Wow.
Zahir came out of the house at that point. You could see Noor pleading with her hands together in almost a praying motion, begging to be let go. Zahir refused and dragged her back into the house. In another instance, July 20th, so the day of the murder, it's actually believed that this was the incident right before the murder. At 7:12 p.m., Noor was desperate. She jumped from the balcony with her phone that she managed to pry away from Zahir. She landed in a way that impacted her stomach. So she was injured. I mean, think about this is after 40 something hours of torture, and she just landed on her stomach. It was a big impact fall. She's holding her stomach, running towards the main gate. But again, the guard and the gardener were seen on the home security footage closing the gate on her to stop her.
God.
Zahir is then seen running out of the house, grabbing her and dragging her back in. At one point, she kind of trips on the door frame and he's physically dragging her in. The security guard did call Zahir's father after one of these attempts and told him, "Sir, your son is taking part in, quote, rude behavior." According to our researchers, apparently in Urdu, it's even more of an understatement. It's being like, "Oh, your son is partaking in shenanigans." I would not classify dragging someone by their hair back into a house and holding them captive and then hearing blood-curdling screams from the victim rude behavior. Zahir's dad just responded casually to the guard, "We'll just figure something out." So they did nothing. And now, even while a group was forming outside the house, they did nothing. Even when 6 people from the clinic came in, past the gate, grabbed a ladder, broke into the house, they did nothing. Not a single one of them stepped aside to call the police. Not a staff member of the house, not any of the 6 therapy employees. Nobody called the police.
So they're breaking into the house, but they don't know what happened yet, right? At this point?
Yeah, but I would imagine if you're breaking into a house, you think that something is clearly wrong with someone. I mean, I guess they could argue that they didn't call the police because it would be a bad look on the Jaffers, and the Jaffers have maybe, allegedly, some financial ties to the clinic. I don't know. But they take a ladder, put it up against the side of the house, unlock the window, break into the house, and they see the crime scene. And again, at this point, any one of the 6, because that's a lot of people, 6 people, one of them could have stepped aside, one of them could have gone back down the ladder to call the police, but they didn't. According to therapist Dr. Tahir, he said the room was covered in blood. They didn't even have time to process what they were looking at before Zahir came at them with a gun and a knife. Yeah, he tried to shoot at them, but thankfully the bullet got jammed. Zahir grabbed his knife, stabbed one of the employees, and I mean, it was really bad. It's like one of those undercut, but like went through the mouth. Everyone froze, and then all hell broke loose. Zahir tries escaping through the window. 2 of the employees are running towards the employee that's now on the ground bleeding. The other 3 are running towards Zahir to try and hold him back, trying to overpower him. They try to grab whatever sheets and fabric they could find to tie him down, but Zahir is not a small man. They stated it took a lot to disarm him and tie him up so that they could finally call the police. And once the chaos was settled, that's when they stated they saw Noor's body and her head 3 feet away. Now, with the sounds of 7 grown adults screaming and fighting, one of the neighbors decided to alert the police. But he doesn't call the police. He decides to go to the police station and personally tell them, hey, you should come to my neighbor's house. So again, very odd. When the police make it to the scene, Zahir is tied up already. He's laying face down on the floor, and the therapy works employees are surrounding him. Zahir was quickly arrested, and he was covered in blood. Noor's family had no idea what had been happening for the past 2 days. Noor left on the night of the 18th, stating that she was going to go meet with a friend and be right back. And something to note is Noor was 27, Zahir was 30 at the time this took place. So while she never really went out late at night with no intention of coming home, that's just not who Noor was. Not that anything's wrong with that. It didn't really seem like the end of the world, even though it's out of character. You know, she's 27, she's responsible. I think she had already built so much trust with her family. They're not going to sit there and be like, oh, Noor's gone off to do something crazy. It's probably like, oh man, Noor's friend probably needs her help on something. But they really started getting worried the night of the 18th, so the night that she left, when she wasn't coming home like past midnight. This is really, really unlike her, right? And if she did have some sort of emergency, she's the type of person that would have told her parents. Like, hey, my friend needs me, something happened or something. She would have told her parents. They start calling her. It goes to voicemail. The family keeps texting her, asking her, hey, just let us know you're safe. Just let us know where you are. What's going on? Authorities believe that Zahir had taken Noor's phone, refused to let her talk to her parents. But as her parents became more and more frantic that night and the calls and texts became more frequent, Zahir stepped in and forced Noor to text her mom that she was out with her friends and they were going to do an impromptu trip to a neighboring city. Again, Noor's parents were so confused and honestly kind of disappointed because Noor was the type of daughter that almost always, except for this time, right, this time quote, that cared about spending all the important holidays with her family, and it was about to be Eid al-Fitr. So this is really, 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 really out of character. But I think that they tried to reason with themselves because they had so much trust in their daughter. She wouldn't have done this unless she absolutely needed to. Maybe her friend is really going through something. Maybe her friend needs her help in a neighboring city. Like, she's just not the type of kid to be like, I'm having so much fun. Like, I'm going to stay out. So they're like, okay, let's just have some trust in our daughter because she's earned it. She'll probably come home and everything can be explained because that's who Noor is. The parents went about their plans, even though they were sad that Noor wouldn't be there. Noor's dad went out to go buy a goat and some fruit. The goat detail will be explained later, but it's part of the whole celebrations of the holiday. Now, Noor's mom was running the rest of their errands. Eventually, they make it back home on July 20th. They looked around and Noor is still not home. Noor's mom starts reading the Quran and praying, and she hears her husband screaming in the next room. She runs over and she's like, what's going on? What's happened? And of course, her anxiety is peaking because this is a diplomat. This is a man who stays cool under pressure. This is not someone who outwardly shows any sort of panic or dramatic emotions. His literal career has been built on not doing that. And it was like he was in a trance. He's crying, he's sobbing, he's screaming, my child, my child. And so her heart is racing. She's like, tell me what's going on. But he was not in a state that he could even register his wife. So her anxiety is going through the roof. She's running around. She finally finds her son who's in the house. And she's like, what's going on? Her son tells her that Noor is gone. At first, Noor's mom thought it was an accident. But it was just so much worse. I mean, obviously, grief is hitting the family hard. Noor had an older brother and an older sister. And Noor's older sister, Sarah, was practically her twin. I think they were like 5 years apart, which is a lot, but people said you would never even notice. They acted like twins. Everyone said it's like they had one soul in 2 bodies. And now one of those bodies had been tortured, beheaded, and murdered. And it was like a piece of Sarah's soul had just died. She was such a wreck. Even their father, who everyone leaned on during these tough times, Noor's dad was known for having a really big laugh. It was what everywhere that he was a diplomat, in whatever country he was in, that's what everyone remembered him for. And it was the kind of laugh that's like that dad laugh. It's very comforting and it's loud. And people they would laugh with him and they would say, shh, stop laughing. It's so loud. People are going to be like disrupted. And they said ever since that day, that laugh was gone. And of course, they all, most of all, miss Noor's laugh. Noor's cousin said, Noor's laugh was something special. She laughed a lot at things that weren't even that funny. But the minute that she starts laughing, you'd be laughing at her because her laugh was just so fun. Her laugh was like contagious. And now she was gone. Do you know the story of Abraham?
No.
Okay. I think this story is prevalent across multiple different religions, so please correct me if I'm wrong. I think different names are used. I think in Christianity, it's Isaac is the name, but let me tell you the story. Abraham saw in a dream that Abraham is a disciple of God, and he sees in a dream that he's beheading his own son, Isaac. This is the Christian version. I think in the Islamic text, it's Ishmael, I believe. So Abraham believes that God is telling him to sacrifice his own son. Now, obviously, Abraham and his wife were torn apart by this because on one hand, God is telling them to do something and they need to trust God because God would never do anything without reason. But on the other hand, this is their son. This is their own flesh and blood. How do you kill your own offspring? Abraham and his wife decided, we have to do this. This is the ultimate sacrifice. Abraham also told Isaac, and Isaac was like, yes, we must do this for God. So they trek up a giant mountain. They find this rock. Isaac was going to lay his neck down on that rock, and he was crying, knowing what was about to happen to him, but he told his dad, like, Dad, do it. They're both emotional. Abraham swings up his axe to kill his own son, and an angel appears to tell him, do not lay a hand on that boy. It was a test. And God was pleased that Abraham was willing to give up all he had for him. So that day, Abraham rejoiced and he gets to have a son. And they sacrifice a goat instead. I know that this is not the best retelling of this story. And I know it's a pretty prominent story across multiple different religions. But ultimately, it's a story of sacrifice. And if I'm not mistaken, every year Muslims celebrate this sacrifice, this story, by sacrificing a goat. It is their way of showing Allah, like, we are willing to make the greatest sacrifice if you need us to. And the meat of the goat is then given to charity. So why is this story important? Well, Zahir tells this to authorities. He tells the story of Abraham, which they already know because it's a predominantly Muslim country. And he states that Noor wanted to be sacrificed.
Wow. Holy.
And the day that they sacrificed the goat is Eid al-Fitr, which is the day that she was murdered. He claims she came to him and wanted him to sacrifice her like a goat. Why? Because she had been in a relationship with Zahir and that would go against her beliefs. And she now wanted to atone for her sins by being sacrificed. This doesn't make any sense for any reason, okay? For so many reasons. The most blatant one being, that would mean Noor was essentially taking her own life, which is not allowed in most religions, including Islam. So this whole story contradicts itself. Secondly, any murder of any kind, even, quote, sacrifices, is not acceptable in Islam. They're a very non-violent religion. So the Islam belief is killing one man is like killing all of mankind, which is why the law of retaliation is given so much precedence. So I know that in stories that we've talked, and I wonder if it's also some propaganda in the West, you know what I mean? But there is this weird out of nowhere belief that Islam can be a violent religion. And I think it's very, very just a misunderstood religion, especially here in the West, especially in the US. I'm learning every day new things about Islam. And, you know, my Muslim friends are always telling me new things. And I'm like, oh, that's so interesting because when I read the news, it's always depicted a different way, right? So there's always that thing that's brought up, which is eye for an eye, right? In a lot of predominantly Muslim countries, the death penalty is a little bit more enforced or well received by the general public. So in the West, there's this connotation of like, wow, it's just so violent over there. But that's not why. It's because the Islam belief against killing a man is so strong, is so like, that is the ultimate worst thing that you could do. So now they give the power to the family of the victims. You can take an eye for an eye because that's how much they don't like killing. It's not because they're like, oh, you did something wrong, death penalty. It's not it. But it's just infuriating to hear him say this, that he was willing to sacrifice his ex for a relationship, quote, sin, that he also took just as much part in. And also, it's just so stupid because there's literal CCTV footage of Noor trying to escape. But here he is saying with his full chest that Noor wanted this to happen to her. Under Noor's fingernails, there is also DNA evidence that showed that Noor was fighting for her life every step of the way. She did not want this. People need to stop telling women what they did or did not want. The worst part of this version of events, that there's other version of events, okay? Zahir tries to convince authorities of like version 1, version 2, version 3. But the worst part of this version of events is that Zahir actually stood in front of Noor's father and stated this. He said he beheaded her because she begged him to be sacrificed. He said sacrifice is a ritual in Islam and Noor wanted to sacrifice her life and presented herself to me for that purpose. Noor's father, can you imagine like the anger he must have felt? But he didn't let it out. He kept it in. He stood tall. He stood up for his daughter and he was dignified. He gave 3 words. You are lying. This was Zahir's newest version of events. His previous ones included, the first one was pretty straightforward. He said that he proposed to her that night and she rejected him, so he killed her. This is immediately upon arrest. This was the first story that he had, which most people believe is the true story. Now, you're probably wondering why he would even confess to something like this if he had plans to get away with it. Let me tell you, he told the Pakistani courts and the police around him, you can't put me in jail. You can't even try me because I'm a US citizen. And everyone's like, you are dumb. You're dumb. Yeah.
So can they try him or no?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
A U.S. citizen is subject to whatever country that they're in and that country's laws. So if you go to vacation in Europe or Mexico or South Korea, you are subject to that country's laws and you can be tried for breaking the law in that country. But I don't know why he didn't think that because...
So he's a murderer and he is ignorant.
Yeah.
He's dumb.
And he was so confident about it. So he's like, yeah, I killed her because I proposed to her and she rejected me. So I killed her. And then later, for some reason, he changed his story because I think that he really wanted to just, try to kill her reputation even after her death. Because he stated, no, I found out that she was in like a very promiscuous relationship with someone else and I killed her because she deserved it.
Wow.
And at one point, he even argued he had no idea what happened. No, really. He changes his story. He goes, no, okay, so the truth is, now I'm telling the truth, right? Noor comes over with a bunch of demanding that he let her host a big party at his house because his parents weren't home. He said, I'm just a frail, dainty 30-year-old boy. I didn't know how to say no. I really didn't want to because I was leaving for America that night, but she already started inviting all of her friends over. They all started getting high and they knocked him out. He said he finally woke up tied up, everybody was gone, and Noor was dead. He said he was rescued by the police officers, insinuating that he wasn't tied up by the therapy employees that day. He was tied up whenever. He doesn't even know when he was tied up. Probably like 2 days ago.
What?
Yeah. He stated the only reason he was even being accused of Noor's murder was because Noor's dad was a very influential person and he was working with the police to frame Zahir. He said, Noor's father wants to get money from us, and for that reason, he, along with the police, built a case against me and my family. He also claimed that he had to be framed for the murder, otherwise it would come out that Noor was having a massive party. He even accused Noor's phone of being swapped in police custody to hide the fact that she had invited her, quote, friends over, which is really, really rich coming from Zahir, because a few years ago, 4 girls had left Zahir's home after a party. It was alleged that Zahir was supplying drugs at that party, and the 4 girls were incredibly high when they left. They got into a car accident, and all 4 died on impact. But now he's like, I was too scared to say no, and I hate drugs. That was just brushed under the rug at the time. Zahir also accused social media activists and women's rights activists of running a campaign against him for their own, quote, vested interests and, quote, money. Whatever that means, because, yeah, we make so much money protesting on the streets, missing work to protest. That makes sense. At one point, Zahir had straight up said to journalists, I was angry. I killed Noor with a knife. Another time he said, I did it. So not a very credible person, obviously. Zahir goes back and forth from outright confessing to the crimes, taking it back, concocting bizarre stories, and then outright confessing to the crimes again. He also did this thing that whenever he was speaking in Urdu, he spoke with this, quote, cute accent. So when you learn, it's like when you learn a different language. If you grew up there learning it, by the time that you're 30 years old, you have a very wide vocabulary. You probably pronounce things in the correct way. But let's say you're an adult and you learn it. You might have like a cute accent where you mess up words. You kind of sound like a foreigner, and it sounds almost a little more babyish.
Okay.
So my Korean definitely sounds more babyish, childish than my English, because English is my primary language. Whereas Korean, because I don't know specific words, I try to I'm like, okay, how can I describe this? Because I don't know that word. I need to use the words I already know. Yeah.
It's like how I was telling you, like if you only spoke in Korean to your mother, so then you can only talk in certain ways.
Yes.
Like to a kid that's talking to adults, I guess, maybe.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's more childish for sure. He's only speaking in this like childish accented Urdu, which typically garners a lot of sympathy from people because it's kind of cute. And also it shows that like, you probably lived abroad, but you're trying to learn your own language, right? It shows that you care. But it was all a facade. Sure, he was born in the US, but he grew up in Pakistan. He literally moved back, and he didn't leave to go back to the US and to the UK until his undergrad days, so college. So he should be not speaking like that.
So he's fluent, but he's pretending.
Yeah. Trying to be like, little old me, I'm so confused, and I'm such a big baby. And one of the biggest questions of this case was, how much did Zahir's parents actually know about what was going on? Neither of them were home. Some sources state that they were away from business or on vacation, but there are call logs to suggest that Zahir was in frequent communications with them during the brutal 48 hours. The day of the murder, Zahir spoke on the phone with his dad more than 5 times. That's a lot for a 30-year-old man to keep calling his dad 5 times in a day. One phone call lasted around 30 minutes, while the others ranged between 2 to 4 minutes. It is believed that Noor was alive and being tortured while he was making some of these phone calls. After Noor's suspected time of death, Zahir called his mom a few times. Collectively, he was on the phone with his mom for over an hour, 72 minutes.
Whoa.
Zahir also continued to call his dad multiple times after Noor's suspected time of death, allegedly. Zahir's dad, speculating, probably knew about the murder and tried to calm down his son over the phone. And it's been said by certain people that are close to this case that his dad practically told him, you don't need to worry, I'm going to send people to rescue you and help dispose of the body. And it is believed that those people are the therapists.
So they're coming to clean up.
But maybe they saw all of Zahir's friends and they're like, oh shit. Like people know we're here. Yeah.
And then Zahir attacked him.
Yeah. Zahir's parents were both arrested. While being arrested, Zahir's dad said, it's a very tragic incident and I would personally like to make condolences to Noor's father because I know him personally. It's a very heinous crime and I would like justice to prevail. Zahir's mother said, Noor was also a woman and I'm a mother and woman too. I also deserve sympathy. I am hopeful.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. I am hopeful the judiciary will give us justice. 2 of the 3 house staff were also arrested for being accomplices to the murder. So I don't know if one, the chef was just not there most of the time or had left or didn't actively try to prevent Noor from leaving and played more of a passive role. He didn't seem to be arrested, but the gardener and the guard that persistently kept not letting Noor escape, they were arrested. Dr. Tahir and his 6 employees were also arrested on charges of concealing evidence. It suggested that Dr. Tahir was heavily on Jaffer's payroll and he was in Zahir's dad's pocket, so to speak. So people thought that they went over with the intention of cleaning a crime scene because why do you bring so many people over? And even later in interviews that he doesn't even refer to Noor by her name. He just keeps calling her the girl, which I find incredibly annoying, but also very insightful into who this man really is. He states that he has no idea why Zahir's father called him to show up at the family home. He does feel like it's some sort of trap, but he doesn't know what. He just said that he showed up believing a former patient of his that had clearly struggled with mental health before was having some sort of relapse. He said the reason that they didn't call the police is not because they wanted to go in there and clean the evidence, was just because it was hectic. They waited out there for 30 minutes because typically patients will realize that there's no coming out of this and they'll walk outside themselves to meet with a therapist, and that usually is a better result in the long run. And then when they went in, they were attacked and it was just chaos, he said. He argued that there was no way that they would have known about the murders prior. He also states, "We didn't even tamper with any evidence." Which, not a great thing to say. It's kind of the bare minimum. He also whined in an interview, "We held him down, we tied him up and subdued him for the police, and nobody is giving us a pat on the back for this? You're all just trying to find the error in our actions? I'm so disappointed. You journalists are so shameful." But the biggest discrepancy was a leaked audio recording of Dr. Tahir revealed that Zahir had come down to talk to them briefly when they first gathered at the house.
What?
This was after Noor was already dead and before they took the ladder to go up to his room. When Zahir was arrested, he had blood on his shirt. So either he changed his clothes and then changed back, which why would he do that? Or the therapist saw that he had blood on his clothes and they didn't do anything.
Wait, I'm so confused. He came down and talked to these people about what?
No one knows,
know.
yeah.
So what audio came out? Which audio?
It's a clip of Dr. Tahir talking about what happened.
Oh.
Yeah. But he doesn't tell the police these things.
We were called in 3 hours after the girl jumped and he murdered her. 3 hours after that. So the question of the timing, when were we there? Was the girl in the room? Could we have intervened? The very fact that the intervention is a mistake. Intervention requires family members to be present.
Also, even if Dr. Tahir didn't know that someone was murdered in the house, he at least knew that there was a woman in the house. Because the phone call that Zahir's dad made was, "My son is soliciting a woman." And if you go there and you're like, "Oh man, I came there because I thought my patient was having a relapse," which is what he stated, and you know that your patient is in the house with a woman, you should know this is a dangerous situation. We don't know what's going on in that house. So we should act quickly. Someone could be in active danger. Side note, he would also argue that Zahir was never employed at the clinic, but there are literal photos of Zahir giving presentations to students on behalf of the clinic. Yeah. Oh, and at one point, Dr. Tahir asked the media why they cared so much about Noor's case. He said, "When women are killed all the time and those cases just disappear from the news cycle, why are you guys so hung up on this one?" What's really crazy, though, is some people took the doctor's side and even took it a step further. People tried to find ways to blame Noor for what happened to her, as if she had any control over this full-grown man's actions. These people wouldn't say outright, but the way that they talked about the case, you could just tell what they're thinking. For example, one big thing was when referring to the relationship between Noor and Zahir, many news outlets kept calling it an affair. Neither of them were married, so by Western standards, it's just a relationship. But in, I guess, more conservative arenas, it could be considered an affair because they shouldn't have been dating in that extent prior to getting married. But still, it's just, I don't know, just adding that connotation to it is unnecessary. It's just unnecessary. What do you get out of it? And how does that excuse murder? It's, you know what this reminds me of? It's how essay is written about. Next time you read an article about essay, take note of this. It's written about passively.
What do you mean?
It's almost always, especially when you're talking about public figures or people that are of importance, it's she was R-worded. It's never this person R-worded her. It's never this person taking that action. It's almost like this imaginary figure, this force of nature did the action on this woman.
Yeah, why is that?
Yeah, it's just a way.
Sound less like serious and less focused on the
criminal.
The criminal, exactly.
Yes, it's more focused on the woman and what happened to her versus the criminal did this to her.
Right.
Yeah, so this is kind of what it reminds me of. It's just small words that are like, why are you doing that? Like, obviously, it's a choice that these reporters are making to call it an affair rather than just a relationship. Even if they weren't in a relationship, doesn't matter. He killed her. Even if they were in a full-blown affair, let's say they were married, doesn't matter. He killed her. Does anything matter? He killed her. I'm so confused. Some netizens even blame the parents for not raising them with better values. They commented, I equally blame her parents. What the hell was she doing out in the middle of the night? What kind of parents are they? My mother won't allow me to go out after 7 p.m. and I'm 37. I still have curfew. Another comment reads, people should train the girls to not believe guys and not leave their homes blindly and join their boyfriends. Parents, please play your roles vigilantly. Or again, just train boyfriends not to kill, which I'm not sure one even needs training for that. It's a literal crime. Like, instead of women bending over backwards to stay alive, why don't people just follow the law? Because isn't that what laws are there for anyway? So if you're breaking the law, you're the problem. Like, the amount of mental cartwheels people are doing is just like depressing on this case. Like, I don't know what else to say. It's just straight up soul sucking and depressing. Others blamed Noor for not being, quote, a good Muslim, which I clearly don't have to point out how damaging that is. First of all, the researchers that worked on this case, they're all Muslim, and they're like, it is so painful to hear that. We have no idea what her relationship was like with Zahir. We also have no idea what her relationship was like to Allah. I mean, Noor, from what we know, was incredibly devoted to her faith. She had this strong relationship with Allah, and it might not have looked like everyone else's relationship, but correct me if I'm wrong or correct me if I'm overstepping, because I'm not a religious person, but religion is about growing and learning about your faith and learning about yourself through your devotion. And of course, everyone's journey is not going to be identical. How can you shame someone for being in their own unique journey? I just think that we need to stop creating all these excuses for when women get murdered. Oh, not religious enough, too religious. Like, what? Even in death, women are devalued if they weren't perfect for society. Some netizens expressed confusion on why Noor even went to go see Zahir that night, as if that was the problem.
Wow.
Which again, something to note is that if he is dead set on murdering someone, I don't think that her saying no to that meeting that night would have wavered his determination in killing her. But another netizen commented, okay, this is all true, but why did Noor run towards her death? Why did she go visit the crazy man? It got so bad, Noor's father had to address the conversations about Noor. And he said, some people are accusing my daughter of very immodest actions. They should remember that they also have daughters. And for saying something like that, there is no compromise. As I have said multiple times, this is no longer about our daughter. This is about all our daughters. It's like these people refuse to look at the facts. She studied religion in college. She learned from many modern Muslim scholars. She was learning Arabic. Even when she was out with friends, she would slip away to do her prayers. She never skipped them 5 times a day. Noor was proud of her faith. She was constantly trying to be better. And obviously, she's from this super privileged family. But instead of acting like she's this little rich girl, which is condescending and patronizing, she embraced it and thought, okay, how can I use my privilege to help others? For every single birthday that Noor had, she asked all of her friends around her to come volunteer with her. They would go to orphanages, they would go to shelters, they would donate gifts. That's how she wanted to spend her birthdays. If there was ever a stray dog in need of assistance, Noor was ready to risk it all to help that dog. She was the definition of someone who wore fluffy socks and her hands were always being warmed on a mug of green tea. When she's gone, all of a sudden, none of that matters. All people want to talk about is, why did she go see her ex-boyfriend? Did she want this for herself? Maybe she shouldn't have dated before marriage. Even major news outlets had referred to Noor at times as, and I'm not going to say the Urdu phrases for it because I'm going to butcher them, but it translates into someone having unorthodox thoughts and opinions, which is a very seriously negative thing in a country like Pakistan, where people are generally a lot more conservative. Another phrase that they often used to describe Noor was selfish in terms of what she wanted to do with her life. They're basically calling her free-spirited, saying that she wants to do things the way she wants to do rather than what society and her parents want her to do, which sounds like a positive thing, right? But again, in a very conservative country, even in South Korea, which is a lot more conservative in the US, it's generally seen as a negative way to describe someone. It's kind of like a backhanded compliment. It's like, oh, you're so free-spirited, but it's also like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Just like fit in with society. One documentary also kept using the word ziba in reference to Noor being beheaded. Our researchers stated that it roughly translates into slicing the neck of an animal to kill it. It's more like saying Noor was slaughtered, like nonstop. One crime reporter speculated that this whole incident came to be because Noor didn't want Zahir to leave the country. And that's why they got into a fight, because he wanted to leave and she didn't want him to. Yeah, it was... Yeah. And I don't know who the hell thought that this campaign against Noor was going to work, or like what they thought it was going to do, that all the other women listening would just agree with them and not be upset over this crime. Like, you're right. You're right. Like, we should just all behave better so we don't get murdered. Sorry for the inconvenience, everyone. We'll go back to the kitchen. Like, it didn't work. The plight of being a woman is universal. I mean, the feeling of being terrified to reject someone in case they get aggressive, the feeling of being scared to walk the streets at night when you're just coming home from school, being gaslit by the judicial system that you somehow caused your own victimization, that you caused the crime, that feeling that you need to baby someone's ego so that you can be safe is such a specific, visceral feeling that I'm sure if you felt it once, it's like a flame inside of you. And these women came together. And there is a certain kind of power that comes out when women get together and stand for justice. Hashtag justice for Noor was trending. Obviously, the crime itself was a shock that was lingering, but Noor was the daughter of a diplomat. And people kept asking, if this could happen to Noor, what happens to us? Nobody is safe. All she did was reject a marriage proposal.
We want justice for Noor. We want justice for women who do not have a voice. We want justice for people who do not have a voice. We want justice against violence. And it starts with structural reform.
There were conversations started about socioeconomic class and how it shapes perceptions about women's safety. Women gathered all around Pakistan to march and protest. In Ireland, where Noor grew up, people gathered in front of the Pakistani embassy. Wow. There were people holding signs that read, hang them, destroy them, humiliate them. We won't stay home so they can grow. No more justice for Noor. There was a candlelit vigil held for Noor in Toronto by human rights activists. I mean, Noor's story really touched a lot of people just from all over the world. I think women were and just still are over it, like just sick and tired of it. Many women came out and shared their own stories of abuse. Many women in Pakistan shared the same experience of dealing with violence against them and family members just telling them that the man that was beating them was just, quote, enraged, and to just be patient because he will come around. No, he can come to jail, okay? People were just over it. Activist Lena Ghani said, we're all tired of sending our prayers and thoughts every time a case happens. Noor's case is not an isolated incident. I don't want any more women to be an example. We are facing a gender terrorism epidemic. Why should the Noors of this country have to give up their lives for all of us to learn a lesson about gender-based violence? People shouted on the streets, women just want to exist without the fear of being or murdered. When the trial started, women were seen outside the courthouse holding signs that read, "Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, life for a life, death for the murderer, justice for Noor." Before the trial, Noor's father said, "I have served this country, and now I want justice from the government. And if, God forbid, I do not get this justice, I will not leave them alone. I was her father." And then Zahir lost his mind. Or at least that's what he wanted the courts to believe. And he committed to the act, if you will. When Zahir was initially brought in the day of the murder, authorities noted that he was sound and in his senses. They said, he may have a history of taking drugs, but at least at this time, he was completely in his senses. He was completely aware of his actions. In the beginning, Zahir would show up to court looking, obviously he didn't look well rested, right? His prison is probably not the same as his mansion, but he looked a bit haggard. And that's to be expected for someone in jail. No one's going to feel sympathy for that. He looked a little tired. He looked a little like, okay, maybe his mattress isn't soft enough. But when he decided to switch to an insanity plea, he got increasingly more insane, conveniently. He starts acting out, screaming at the judge, screaming things like, "This court is nothing but dirt. This court is dragging this because they have no power. I have never seen something more fake. This is all a puppet show. I have never seen so many more incompetent people in the same room in my entire life." He had to be escorted out of the courtroom. His hair was getting crazier and crazier by the day. He would just start yelling profanities at everyone. When he was escorted out of the courtroom, he would be rambling and pointing randomly as if he was having like a psychotic episode. To give him the benefit of the doubt, I'm not a doctor, obviously. The symptoms he is presenting could match with schizophrenia. However, the timing of this was just also convenient. The media ripped him apart, which I'm not really mad about. I think there's a lot of more things to be mad about right now about this case, but the media ripped him apart because his behavior to the media just gets progressively more, quote, psychotic as the trial progresses. So suddenly he just looked like he was having a rough time, and now he's being wheeled around in wheelchairs, coming in on stretchers, drooling like a zombie, being pushed and pulled by the police. There's a video of him being dragged out of court, and the officers are holding him by his arms and his legs as if he's like a duffel bag, and they're just like swinging him around as they're dragging him out of court. The theory was, once he realized that he wasn't going to come out of this alive, he started changing his behavior to appear more psychotic in hopes of getting the insanity plea. Ultimately, medical reports would declare him fit to stand trial. The report stated that the accused kept appearing in court in wheelchairs on the pretense of seeming, quote, mentally ill. Once he realized his insanity plea wasn't going to work, he went right back to just looking haggard and tired. No more court outbursts, no more wheelchairs, no more stretchers, no more mumbling. He did say, though, that he would rather die than go back to prison. He claimed that the guards were beating him. He even turned to Noor's father and said, "I don't want to die behind bars. I should be married and have kids. Noor and I fought. It was my fault, but she was also angry. My life is in your hands. Please, you can save me."
Wow.
He made it sound like he was having the absolute worst time in prison, which honestly, I'm not sure what you're expecting, right? Like, if anything, it seemed like Zahir was getting special treatment for being a U.S. citizen. So let me explain. Zahir was born in the U.S. He's a U.S. citizen living in Pakistan. And like I said, he was like, "Oh, you can't arrest me because I'm a U.S. citizen, right?" Well, the U.S. embassy, a consular, comes to visit Zahir in prison and gently, nicely notifies him, "No, even though you're a U.S. citizen, if you're in a foreign country, you are subject to the country's laws." But the U.S. embassy did send him a cute little care package.
What do you mean?
Yeah, they sent him a package. Jail authorities returned the package to the U.S. embassy, saying that they violated diplomatic protocols. The package contained books, clothes, and perfumes, like self-care items. It was a bad look. The U.S. Embassy came out to clarify that the gifts were sent to Zahir because, and I quote, "U.S. embassies and consulates abroad are required by U.S. and international law to provide assistance to American citizens who are incarcerated and detained abroad, regardless of the charges against them." So while the U.S. Embassy might have had their own reasonings behind it, it just did further anger the public. Like, Zahir is from a wealthy family. He just murdered and beheaded someone because they didn't want to marry him. I don't think he gets to read a novel right now. I don't think he gets to use a scented soap bar right now. It just felt like everyone from not only this country, but even in the US is like bending over backwards for a literal killer It's like, what are we playing games right now? Zahir and his parents were constantly seen in fresh new clothes and new haircuts while they're in custody. A police officer was even overheard telling Zahir, hey, you're a talented person.
What?
Yeah. It was just all so frustrating. Regardless, Zahir was found guilty of essay and murder. Originally, he received 25 years of hard labor in prison, but he appealed the decision saying it was too harsh, and the judge came back and agreed that the decision was wrong. So they gave him the double death penalty instead. Yeah.
Wait, he got 25 and then he appealed?
And then they were like, okay, death penalty. Yeah.
Wow.
Which is interesting, but the double death penalty is to ensure that if he tries to appeal again, and even if one of the death penalties are overturned, he still has the other one. He received a death penalty for murder and one for essay. And nobody felt sympathy for him. No matter how hard he tried to get it, he would actually become a joke amongst mainstream media. News channels would play very intense, dramatic music while playing reruns of his outburst in court. It made it look like a soap opera. Yeah. Unfortunately, his parents and the clinic employees were acquitted, and staff members only received 10-year sentences in prison, which was a huge disappointment to not only Pakistani netizens, but also to Noor's parents. But the judgment against Zahir was still something. You know, many netizens have stated that Pakistan's track record for prosecuting gender-based crimes is very low. According to the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Index, Pakistan ranks 153 out of 156 countries.
So this is considered a significant step for the country.
Huge. I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you some of the previous court rulings that just happened, similar to Noor. So we don't have reliable data on crimes against women in Pakistan, but the UN estimates that the conviction rate in cases is anywhere between 1 to 2.5%.
Wow. So most 99% people get away.
Yeah. And victims don't even come out and try to press charges, because what happens when a victim is essayed or beat and they're a woman, suddenly they're on trial. You know, even just a few years prior in 2018, there was another high-profile case where a human rights activist was stabbed 23 times by her boyfriend on a busy public road. She had broken up with him and he stabbed her 23 times. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison, but that was later reduced to 2 years. And then the court was like, you know what? We're just going to acquit him. The Supreme Court had to step in and restore the 2-year sentence.
2 years.
Yeah. Just last year in 2022, a woman was killed by her own brother for posting, quote, shameful pictures on Facebook. The courts let him walk free.
How does that even make sense?
Yeah. In 2016, a council proposed a bill to allow men to, quote, lightly beat their wives should the need for punishment arise. The proposal bans forceful beatings, saying only a small stick is necessary to instill fear. So now this felt significant. This was the beginning to an end of women being murdered and killers getting away with it. Activists posted, Zahir's crimes were not only confined to rape and murder, but the fact that he used his money and influence to assail the credibility of the victim. This perhaps is another crime where the victim becomes the accused. The wounds Noor's assault and murder inflicted on the collective conscience of humanity may never heal. It is reassuring that beasts in human disguise will realize the consequences can be grave. So as of right now, I believe Zahir is appealing his death sentences, and we're just going to have to wait and see what the Supreme Courts will do. I assume there will be massive outrage if they try to overturn or do anything about that. And I think that we're seeing this everywhere. Women just are not putting up with shit anymore. And I think that it would be very wise for governments to take note of that, act, change, and protect women's right to live. You know, just exist and live without fear of getting murdered. And now, every October 23rd, women from all over the world, not even just Pakistan. So the first one was October 23rd, 2022, and hopefully this year it'll happen again. Women from all over the world have been preparing gifts for local orphanages and shelters in honor of Noor's birthday, because that's what she liked to do. Noor's family visit her grave every day, They all go to talk to Noor, and most days, Sarah will tell the rest of her family, "Go home. Can you pick me up later? I just have a lot to say to Noor." And Sarah would just sit there talking to Noor for hours and hours on end. And that is the story of Noor. What are your thoughts? Please leave it in the comments. And obviously, I don't think that we need other disclaimers of like this, but like I said, Islam is not a violent religion. Zahir is not a true Muslim. He's a killer. This is no reflection of the religion. If anything, Noor is the reflection of Islam. So let me know your thoughts, and I will see you guys on Wednesday for the main episode. Bye.